Arbor, Washtenaw County, Michigan.
Commissioner Sanders,
Present, attending remotely from Pittsfield Township, Washtenaw County, Michigan.
Commissioner Scott,
Present, attending remotely from the city of Ann Arbor and various other townships before I go back to the city of Ann Arbor, Washtenaw County, in the great state of Michigan.
Commissioner Schenk.
Present, attending remotely from Northfield Township, Michigan.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you, Robert. Okay, we are going to move into citizen participation. You will have 3 minutes to speak here in Ways and Means. I will have to cut you off at that 3-minute mark, unfortunately, so it's best if you time yourself. If you are joining us via Zoom, you'll click the raise your hand icon at the bottom of the screen to indicate to me that you would be interested in speaking. If you are joining us by phone, you will click on *9 to raise your hand, and then after I call on you, you will hit *6 to unmute yourself. So just as a reminder, you will have 3 minutes. And once I call on you, I'll ask you to state your name and where you are joining us from, just as we all have said too. So it's good modeling of what we're looking to do here. Okay, so 3 minutes. Again, the 3-minute thing is that it's a board rule. It's unfortunate when I have to cut people off. Not something I would like to do, but that's what we have to do. Let's get it going. First, we have a John.
I'm sorry, good evening. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Very good. Thank you. My name is John Weiss. I'm calling in from Ypsilanti, Michigan. I'm a 26-year resident of Ypsilanti. Thank you to the commissioners for being able to offer some public comment. My public comment tonight is to advocate for more resources, especially those currently being allocated out of the American Rescue Plan that would focus on BIPOC-led nonprofits and small businesses, especially those that are on the eastern part of the county. These resources I'm advocating should target grassroots organizations to help them get the resources they need to continue and expand the critical work they're doing to reach the most underserved and marginalized in our communities. Specifically, I'm urging the commission to support adding a community safety and empowerment category to your funding distribution to help programs address the essential needs of our most disenfranchised members. In 2018, the County Board of Commissioners established the County Racial Equity Office, demonstrating that racism and equity are imperative issues that require our attention in the county. And I'm urging you to build on that commitment with a unique opportunity, especially with the American Rescue money, to provide the resources to ensure a racially just recovery from the COVID pandemic. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next up, we have Alex. State your first and last name and where you're joining us from.
Hi, Alex Thomas, West Willow Community Advocate, calling from the largest neighborhood and the second largest municipality in Washtenaw County, Ypsilanti Township. I'm calling for 2 reasons this evening. I want to urge the commissioners to fund the Conviction and Integrity Unit and the Expungement and Conviction Integrity Unit that our prosecutors asked for. Also, the second issue, to fund these grassroots community organizations that were asked about in the last commission session. With the first one, our prosecutor's office that asked, I saw in the memo to our Board of Commissioners where our prosecutors cited a 6% number as far as the number of people estimated nationally that are convicted or that are incarcerated for an offense that they weren't guilty of. So with that 6% ratio, it leaves, just doing the numbers, it's about 1,400 from Washtenaw County in Michigan. So a conservative number, 1,000. And when you think about that and you think about the expression in people that have more romanticized idea about our judicial system, they might say better that 10 guilty go free than 1 innocent person. Well, we know we have at least 1,000 as a conservative estimate from Washtenaw County. So please do fund that unit. With the ask before about the grassroots community organizations, I've heard so many reasons why not to give. Many of them aren't 501c3s. 501c3s don't have the history. What they do have is might not have that formal history, but they do have that lived experience of giving direct aid and coming from those communities. And what I found through last year, distributing 3 grants directly for COVID relief, there's some awesome, incredible networks that were developed where people out of need and necessity were really learning how to address those immediate concerns that we all want to address on the eastern part of the county. So one of those ways to think about actually addressing them and saying how to instead of how not. A fiduciary, there are many great experienced fiduciary nonprofits or outside of that legal entities that could place in that could serve as fiduciaries for distributing those funds to those different groups. And it could be a first step in completion of the entire amount to each group. For 200,000, you could do an initial round where you had a fiduciary to each one if it's green. But those are my thoughts, and I just thank you for listening. I thank you for all of your time, and I know y'all have a difficult job. Interesting times we're in, but thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Tad. Tad, say first and last name and where you're joining us from.
This is Tad Weiser calling from Ypsi Township. Wanted to, I'm a part of the We Rock Justice Matters action team. And as Alex just did, also speaking today in support of a permanent conviction integrity and expungement unit in the county. Just appreciate the support that the county board has showed earlier this year for the unit, and we now ask the board to just take all the appropriate steps to allow the unit to continue its extremely important work into the future. It's meaningful to me as somebody who hasn't had any negative impacts from the justice system as an old male white resident. But that makes me all the more, it makes it all the more disturbing to me to realize that whenever we may have taken away, from an innocent person, not just their freedom, but their relationships, employment, well-being, their future, the ability to contribute to the community in the future, it's a horrible thing. We don't know exactly how much of that is happening. So the beauty to me of the CEIU unit is that it's a practical way for us as a larger community to look in more detail at claims of innocence, and when the evidence can be found, to go to court and reverse the wrongful conviction. And I'm also impressed that the idea that experienced permanent staffing for the unit can advise prosecutors in the county on preventable causes of wrongful convictions in the future. And just the other part of the unit, the ability for, again, us collectively as a community to put resources into facilitating the expungement of past convictions is also a critical way of just making sure we're looking toward how we can work together, bring people back into full participation. And that's where, to me, the prosperity and the health of the county comes from, when everyone is participating. And we're not looking for punitive from a punitive perspective, but how do we bring us all together? Thanks for your time, and I look forward to working with you all on other issues in the future as well.
Thank you. Next up, we have Harvey. Harvey, please, first and last name and where you are joining us from.
Harvey Summers, calling in from Scioto Township, and I'm also part of the We Rock Justice Matters action team. And I'm also speaking in support of a permanent conviction integrity and an expungement unit in the county prosecutor's office. We appreciate the support that the county board showed earlier this year for setting up the CIEU. And we now support the board taking the appropriate steps to allow this unit to continue and expand its important work, including authorizing the new assistant prosecuting attorney position under consideration tonight. Let's give our extraordinary prosecution team all of the tools it needs to make Washtenaw County a more just community. And I thank you for all the decisions that you make for our county.
Thank you. Next up, we have Kenneth. Kenneth, first and last name and where you're joining us from. Before you go, Kenneth, I want to say for people that maybe this is their first time attending one of our meetings, it is not anyone's intention to be rude by not responding immediately. That's just not how these meetings are structured. So after all residents have given comment, after that, then the commissioners can respond. I know it's kind of unusual and people sometimes want a response immediately, but this is just how the structure works. Go ahead, Kenneth.
My name is Kenneth Nixon. I'm 35 years old. I am an exoneree from Wayne County. I spent 15 years and 9 months incarcerated for a crime that I did not commit. I am here to speak on behalf of the funding for the Conviction Integrity Unit. I think that it is extremely important that it is a well-funded unit so that innocent people aren't languishing in prison for crimes that they didn't commit. You never know what type of situation that person may be in. You and the government bureaucracy that stands in the way of this sometimes forgets that they're human beings attached to these dollars. There's a considerable amount of regard that should be taken when it comes to these decisions, because again, you don't know what situation that person could be in. That person could be dying in a prison cell to no fault of his own for something that he didn't do. Expungement also becomes extremely important because one thing a lot of people don't know about exonerations is that the conviction is still on your record until the court process is complete. That process takes sometimes months, sometimes years to complete. I've been home a little over 8 months and the conviction still shows up on my record to no fault of my own. Government bureaucracy has gotten in the way of that. Having an expungement unit attached to a conviction integrity unit could considerably expedite that process for the exonerated person within your county. It is extremely important to make that person whole as quickly as possible because it stands in the way of employment. It stands in the way of housing. It stands in the way of his entire life, his or her entire life. The decision about funding this conviction integrity unit should be a no-brainer to anybody that believes in justice. It doesn't have anything to do with not knowing, because we see it every day. Every day, every week, there's a headline about another wrongfully incarcerated person. And unfortunately, there are wrongfully incarcerated people that come from Washtenaw County. You guys have the power to change that. You guys have the power to do something about that. And I would hope and pray that you do everything within that power to ensure that it doesn't continue to happen on your watch.
Thank you. Next up, we have Gail. Gail, first and last name and where you're joining us from.
If it was Gail Summerhill, Ypsilanti Township.
Yes.
Good evening. Let me put my timer on. Okay. I sent out a fact sheet that came from the White House. Hopefully everyone received it. I know it was rather long, but these are the things that I received from the White House. Every week we meet in 2 separate meetings. One is with the, from the Biden administration, the faith and community engagement. Then separately, there's another call on Fridays, which is specifically for people of color that talk about issues for people of color. I just wanted to let you know, going forward, the way I read things and have heard things that come from Washington, I've questioned some of the rollout, especially as it related to COVID. In the very beginning, from the information I received versus how things were rolling out in the county, they were not as intended. How things rolled out were not the way that it was spoken to me and many other people across the United States that attend these meetings. I would love to work with you because I have been within this county for 30 years. I see that people have gone around me, but I think we're better together as it relates to my advocacy work, especially in Ypsilanti. That's all I'd like to say, but please, I will inform you on things that I receive from the White House if I see that some of the policies are not being followed in the way that I receive them. So I think we would be better together, working together and in line with what the White House intentions are. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Alicia. Alicia, first and last name and where you're joining us from.
Hello, my name is Alicia Dyer, Ypsi Township. I'm also part of the We Rock Justice Matters action team, and I'm speaking today in support of a permanent conviction integrity and expungement unit in the county prosecutor's office. We appreciate the support that the county board showed earlier this year and for supporting the CIEU to be set up and begin its work. And we just ask the board take all appropriate steps to allow the unit to continue its extremely important work into the future. On a personal note, for anyone on the board that doesn't know, I was a former road patrol officer and worked here locally for several years in Ypsi Township. When I first started, you hear stories from back in the day about how things were done, and many of our practices in the justice system were extremely problematic. And arguably currently practices are still problematic. And I say this to say that I have no doubt that there are people wrongfully convicted from this county sitting in prison right now. It's a hard pill to swallow, but we can't ignore this. And I know the agenda list of things to do is long, but it really means a lot that we support things that will help reduce the harm in our justice system. So again, thank you. On a separate note, I worked very closely with families impacted directly by gun violence for years, and I recently lost a youth I mentored because of gun violence, and it's not the first time this has happened. The reality is for decades, we have underinvested in our 48198 and 48197 community, and it's had devastating ripple effects. A theme I've heard working with families where youth are just as involved is why is there no help for children in Ypsi until they get a charge and get into the system and then services open up. And then that doesn't help either and sometimes makes it even worse. We need things for our youth to do on a preventative level. I want to voice support for directly funding the local organizations and nonprofits on the ground working in 48197 and 48198 zip codes. If we funded more of these nonprofits and organizations, their capacity could increase, and it's proven to help reduce gun violence. A lot of us in the community, we do what we can, sometimes with our own money, because that's what we do in Ypsi, but real funding and support would make such a difference in our young people's lives. Thank you to the commissioners that have been focused on this. I know this sits close to home for a lot of us, especially Commissioner Hodge, who lives in Sugarbrook, where some of the recent shootings have happened. Our Ypsi and Ypsi Township-based nonprofits do so much. Increasing their capacity and funding, as outlined in the Survivor Speak proposal, would be huge. It's a great idea. It's evidence-based, and it will empower our whole community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Audrey. Audrey, first and last name, where you're joining us from. Audrey, you have to unmute. Audrey, you should be able to unmute now. I'm seeing that I believe it's a on your end situation here. So we're going to circle back to Audrey. Let's see. Next, we'll go with Lauren. Lauren, first and last name and where you're joining us from.
Hi there. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Lauren Fardig Diop. I'm a resident kind of on the border of Ann Arbor and Pittsfield Township. I work as a teacher and restorative practitioner in Ypsilanti Community Schools, and my kids go to Ypsilanti Community Schools. I'm here tonight to advocate for the use of ARPA funds toward supporting Black-led community-based organizations who are working to stop the gun violence in Ypsilanti and to support the idea of a community recreation center for our young people on the east side of the county, as well as to support funding for the Conviction, Integrity, and Expungement Unit. Our Ypsilanti community has been hit incredibly hard by the pandemic. We know from health department data that there is a disparate impact on the east side of the county in the 48197 and 48198 zip codes, where people are essential workers and often didn't have the luxury of quarantine. People are experiencing eviction and homelessness, food insecurity, and extreme poverty as the pandemic rages on and folks have returned to work because unemployment has ended. My students are grieving the losses of parents, siblings, cousins, grandparents, and other family members, and we need more mental health programs and services to help our community heal. We know that an increase in grief, trauma, and other stressors, plus a limited number of engaging social activities and job opportunities for our young people, has resulted in more young people being out on the streets unsupervised because parents are at work. One of my students was shot and killed 2 weeks ago, and more lives were lost last week as well. Residents on the south side of Ypsilanti and West Willow have talked about how shots are fired almost every night and how they fear for their safety and the safety of their families. We lost 3 students in the past 2 years to gun violence. And at my small alternative high school, and I'm sorry, my kids in the background, I have been in meeting with a group of community leaders who want to take action to protect our young people and come up with solutions rooted in community care. There are so many great ideas that community leaders have to stop the violence and build sustainable systems for supporting the growth and development of our young people. Some of those ideas are investing in the Park Ridge Community Center on the south side and leasing or buying an existing building in the Sugarbrook or Willow Run area to run a recreation center where different community organizations can service and support our young people in a collaborative effort to create a village of protection around our children. The Dispute Resolution Center has been working with Prosecutor Ellie Savitt to begin a restorative justice diversion program, which is another project that could benefit from a community hub where mediation and conflict resolution take place. Training and dispatching community members to resolve conflicts peacefully before they escalate to violence with the support of Supreme Felons, Survivor Speak, and other organizations working toward accountability without prison could make Washtenaw County a model for other counties in terms of finding innovative ways to meet community needs and stop violence. We envision wraparound services for young people and community members in need of mental health services, social work, and so much more. We need funding to put these visions into practice, and we believe that the dedication of ARPA funds towards some of these projects and organizations on the ground doing the work can help create a more peaceful, healthy county overall. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We are going to try Audrey again. Audrey, you want to, looks like you unmuted briefly. There you go. You're unmuted. First and last name and where you're joining us from.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. You have to be persistent with this technology. I'm here to highly support the Conviction Integrity Unit. I was glad to hear Kenneth Nixon on the call. One of the reasons why we want a Conviction Integrity Unit in Washtenaw County. I have met that young man and have had conversations with him. As you know, the Conviction Integrity Unit investigate claims of innocence to determine whether there is clear and convincing new evidence that the convicted defendant was not the person who committed the harm or the offense. This is why I support CIU. I also support it because it is based on biblical principles. There is history in the Bible where people were sent to a place to dwell there before they were convicted. And this is way back in ancient of days. I feel it is a good practice for Washtenaw County to have. September 2020 report of the National Registry of Exonerations site. In 54% of exonerations, official misconduct contributed to the false convictions, usually more than one type of misconduct. Leading causes of wrongful convictions are eyewitness misinterpretation and police misconduct. I also look at that with a racial lens, in that we have a very high population of BIPOC individuals who end up with wrongful conviction. I support CIUs. Washtenaw County would benefit from it. I ask that you vote yes to have a CIU and to fund this department in regards to what it needs to continue promoting justice in our county. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Margaret. Margaret, first and last name, and where you're joining us from.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so Margaret Schenkler from Ann Arbor, and I'm here to mention three things. One, I'm in support of the Survivor Speak proposal to direct ARPA funds towards grassroots organizations, and I'm also to support the Conviction Integrity Unit. I think that's so important, and to make it permanent would be a really good thing for our county. And I concur with all the comments that have been shared with you on that topic. And then the last thing was at a previous meeting when we were talking about how to elicit community input on how to spend the ARPA funds. Some of the commissioners asked for some ideas on how to do that. And I got together with some other people and sort of just shopped this document around of about 10 ideas. And it's ready to go in an email that I'm going to send to all of you and to Peter after this meeting. And I hope that you will take a look at it. And perhaps put it on your agenda for your work session. Obviously not tomorrow, but in the coming weeks. And I just want to highlight one idea on that list that I think would be particularly effective. It's something we call the ARPA for Equity Community Team. And as you may know, currently Ypsilanti Township residents are working with the Ypsi Township trustees to develop a similar program for spending the township's ARPA money. And I'd like to see the county do the same. The ARPA for Equity team would be composed of residents from across the Opportunity Index areas, community activists, commissioners, and pertinent public service employees. This team would review and discuss all proposals and ideas brought to the county for spending the ARPA money and present the team's recommendations to the Board of Commissioners, enhancing commissioners' understanding of people's lived experiences across the county. And unlike this current 3-minute public comment period and various opportunities to email you, I believe that this team will provide the community with a meaningful voice at the table, potentially building relationships that will endure beyond this project. So I look forward to hearing your thoughts and ideas on how to deepen your engagement with the community. Thank you for your time. If anybody does not get the email or cannot open the document, it's a Google Doc. I know sometimes you need a Gmail account. Just let me know. My email is mshankler@gmail.com. But hopefully it will reach all of you. Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we've got Lisa. Lisa, first and last name and where you're joining us from.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, my name's Lisa Carey Harrow, and I'm joining you from Pittsfield Township. Just need a second here, please. Can you circle back, please?
Oh, yeah, we can come back to you, Lisa. Okay.
I appreciate it.
Yep. Marvin, first and last name and where you're joining us from.
My name is Marvin Cotton Jr. I am an exoneree from Wayne County. I've been living in Michigan all my life. I spent half of my life on the west side of Detroit, and I spent the other half of my life in prison. I was exonerated 1 year ago, 1 year and 2 weeks ago. My anniversary of my release was October 1st. I would like all of the commissioners to know that the work you're doing and what you're considering is so important that it is actually life-saving. Now, I know you guys and the decisions that you make on a day-to-day basis in order to fund everything, that sustains life in and of itself. But there are wrongfully convicted men and women that are sitting in dark, cold prison cells now contemplating suicide. no hope, no other alternatives. And sometimes you may think that, well, we have a judicial system, we have judges that actually look at these things. Well, I want you to know that sometimes it's not the judge that sits behind a bench, it's the judge that sits behind a desk that is making judgments and establishing truth, like you guys do when you sit behind your desk and you make decisions that actually give life. I want you to know that it's very important that each day that Washtenaw County doesn't have a functional conviction integrity unit, what hangs in the balance of that? You know, I've been out now for 1 year, but I spent 19 years, 7 months, and 12 days in prison fighting for my life, 22 appeals. And it took a conviction integrity unit to actually find and establish the truth. They did what no lawyer that I've hired could do. They found truth that only a prosecutor office can find, because, you know, police departments can't hide from prosecutor offices, you know. The resources is just different. And I want you guys to know that the decisions that you make when it comes to this conviction integrity unit is life-saving. The ripples in the families that's going to be positively affected by your decisions is you really can't even explain it. You know, I advocate for any prosecutor office throughout the country, and we do this. Kenneth Nixon is somebody we travel the country and advocate for conviction integrity units. We don't get caught up in politics. I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. You know, innocence doesn't have a political party. Justice doesn't have a political party. And no man, no woman should sit a day in prison for a crime that they didn't commit. And if the government has the ability.
Marvin, at your time, can you wrap up this thought you have, and then you're at your time.
Thank you, commissioners. Thank you for listening. I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. Thank you. All right, next up, Lisa, are you prepared now?
Hi, yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, it's 2 kids on a school night. But I'm here and I just wanted to make a few statements. I wanted to start off saying that in 2020, there was a case argued by progressive California attorney Mark Rosenbaum. U.S. District Court of Appeals ruled that all U.S. students have a right to a basic minimum education under the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, and that the literacy is essential to the exercising of other basic rights. Increased literacy is the answer to many challenges in the eastern part of our county. Literacy rates are abysmal. New data has just come out, and some of the areas have literacy rates lower than Flint during the water crisis. This has been an ongoing emergency that's been neglected by this board. Literacy does not need a separate bucket. It permeates all of them. Literacy is a health and well-being issue. Even Governor Whitmer, in settling the right to literacy case 4 years later, I might add, implored that all levels of government, implored that literacy needs to be invested in all levels of government. Most of these groups that we're asking for to have money allocated, they have a literacy component involved. They're using unconventional strategies, as the previous caller outlined. They use these unconventional strategies that are unique to the people, families, and children that they serve. These strategies can't be replicated. They can't be copied. They're unique to the BIPOC groups, the grassroots groups that have their boots on the ground and have been working in these communities for years. The money that's left for the American Rescue Plan should be exclusively allocated to BIPOC grassroots groups, as outlined in the Survivor Speak plan. I've worked side by side with some of these groups and these literacy initiatives. In Benton Harbor, we have another looming literacy crisis. It's permeating Black and Brown communities all over the place. And if we don't get busy, get some resources there and work together, some of the futures could be lost for these children. So there is no more time to wait. We can't wait till 2024 or whenever you think is in the future. These emergencies have been ongoing and they need infusion of funds ASAP. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Next up, we've got Eric. Eric, first and last name, and where you are joining us from.
Hello, my name is Eric Anderson. I'm joining you from Detroit. I'm an exoneree. I spent 9 years, 2 days in prison for something I did not do. In 2019, I was exonerated. I'm in full support of the Conviction, Integrity, and Expungement Unit in Washtenaw County. I think that it is imperative that you guys support this and pass, all the funding necessary in order to, run the unit. I think that, as the last two exonerees stated, that no man or woman should spend their time in prison for a crime they did not commit. It's people in this world that's, need convincing. They think just because an individual is arrested that they are guilty, which in fact, that's not the case. You have 3 exonerees that have spoken, including myself thus far, that, was doing it what they were supposed to do in life, was minding their own business, and somehow evil came unto them and uprooted our lives. If it wasn't for the Wayne County Conviction Integrity Unit, we wouldn't be speaking to you today. If it wasn't for Conviction Integrity Unit, we wouldn't be able to do the work that we do as far as advocating for justice, period. Not only for people that's in prison for crimes they didn't commit, but just individuals that's out here that's trying to get their life together, that's restricted by some kind of legal loophole that want to contribute to the society that we live in. I feel like the fact that this meeting or that this issue is on the table today, you guys are considering it, and I'm thankful for all that you are doing. In the name of justice, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we've got Jen. Jen, first and last name, and where you're joining us from.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Shikes Haynes, and I am joining you from Ann Arbor Township. And there are 2 things that I wanted to speak on tonight. And first of all, good evening, commissioners, and thank you for all you are doing for our county. You're very much appreciated. I too want to put in my voice in terms of funding for a permanent conviction, expungement, integrity unit. Again, I feel that this is very important. And I think both of the things that I'm speaking about tonight are intertwined, and that is having a just and thriving Washtenaw County for all. We also can't afford, in terms of just the factors that people are losing days of their lives that they should never have lost in the first place, we're also losing as a community those vital people that we need in our community, and there's no way that they should have been taken out in the first place. So again, that is very important. And the other thing, it's crucial, but the other thing is that at the last Ways and Means Committee meeting, in response to Ms. Duckworth's proposal to fund small community-led initiatives that are holding the needs of the eastern part of Washtenaw County, you challenged those of us who stand with her message and focus to align support for grassroots, community-led BIPOC initiatives to demonstrate how this can qualify for ARPA funding. And I believe through a letter that Ms. Duckworth was sending out to you, she's demonstrated strongly that the directives of the ARPA funding can provide ways to center those organizations and businesses in our Washtenaw County community who have not been the recipients of the same grants or other opportunities that are regularly extended to larger white-led organizations. This is what keeps our county in pitiable wealth, health, and other inequities based on zip codes that also reflect our racial divides. I believe or greatly hope that you are all invested in seeing our most economically vulnerable populations thrive so that all of us can benefit from the wealth and opportunities present in Washtenaw County, and so that we all can benefit from the ideas and focus of the leaders of these smaller initiatives who are only suffering from an opportunity gap and who really pulled large groups of our population through the COVID crisis and many other crises. This is not a county that will ever thrive if there are large portions of our population who are cut out and consistently overlooked. The ARPA funding can go a long way toward addressing these inequities. The urgency for distribution of these funds to community-led organizations and BIPOC entrepreneurs and small business owners is a desperate need. It is time to take bold action and listen to all the voices in our county, which is something that I believe you all want to address in a just and timely manner. Funding the same solutions and organizations that are not fixing any of
At your time, can you wrap up this thought?
Yep, I'm wrapping up. Will continue to produce the same dismal results. So I urge you to please follow this lead and have us have a truly thriving and generative community. And I thank you for your consideration to this vital need. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Next up, we've got Floki. First and last name and where you're joining us from.
Hi, I'm Floki Ivy. In the wake of burying, I'm from the Ypsilanti Township. In the wake of burying a 17-year-old Ypsilanti boy due to gun violence, Shade Duckworth addressed you all on October 6th, demanding that second-round stimulus funds from the Federal American Rescue Plan go to existing grassroots organizations in Ypsilanti and Ypsilanti Township. Ypsilanti and Ypsilanti Township will receive $2 million and $5.45 million respectively of the rescue plan. Of the total funds allocated to Washtenaw County, $11.85 million has been allocated to the city of Ann Arbor, 37% more of the money than these two areas combined. Ann Arbor is an affluent area with a large tax base and tons of infrastructure to deal with systemic problems. The fact that they are using the money in their own backyard speaks to the liberal elitism rampant in our county and country. Making a local BIPOC leader beg for scraps while Ann Arbor red lights broadband to the booties is shameful. Counties and townships are allowed to pool the money for the good of the whole county, and ultimately each township is responsible for where the money is spent. It is clear that the mass incarceration, rampant gun violence, and 48198 and 48197 area codes is something that is not much of a concern for the other counties. They are more than willing to wash their hands of the problems because it's not in their zip code. While the initiatives funded thus far are great, they target long-term goals are not what the people with the boots on the ground are asking for. So often, people in our area are told what they need and not asked what they need. Duckworth presented the board with what the area wants, but you didn't seem to listen to what we want. Gun violence is a systemic problem in Ypsilanti. The township has some of the highest gun violence rates per capita in the entire country. There are existing groups from the area that are working to solve these problems, but they lack funding. Duckworth's intent in putting forward this proposal is to get money to the hands of grassroots agencies that are specifically offering moments of community healing and empowerment. Duckworth is an activist with Survivor Speaks, and she just wants to give these groups who already are on the ground an opportunity to do what they already are doing. There were 12 shootings in Washtenaw County in 2020. 10 of those were in Ypsilanti and Ypsilanti Township. The violent crime rate is 2 times that of the state average and 3 times the national average. This puts residents of Ypsilanti at a 1 in 105 chance of being victimized by violent crime. In the last 5 weeks alone, there have been 5 gun crimes reported to police. There are a lot of programs in the area that are addressing the systemic problems of gun violence, but they are underfunded. The township is sick of taking scraps and not being asked what we need. While these things have been great that you've funded so far, they aren't asking us what we need. These grassroots groups are not given, why these grassroots groups are not given more discussion last time is beyond me. You gave emergency funds to the safe house, and then
So you're at your time. Can you wrap up the thought that you're on?
Sure. You gave emergency funds to be distributed by the commission, and then they weren't having to jump through a bunch of red tape, but Duckworth's proposal was made to jump through a bunch of red tape in order to get those funds put forth. And I think that the same money should be allocated to Duckworth and then Duckworth's proposal and then put forth that way. That's all for me.
Thank you. All right, next up we've got Soar. Soar, please say your first and last name, where you're joining us from.
Hello, this is Trisha Duckworth. I am joining you from Belleville. I sent further conversation and ideals to you all, and I hope that we can move forward with having conversations how we can provide relief for the eastern part of the county through these grassroots organizations. I also wanted to point out that we as Survivor Speak cannot propose anything on behalf of any group. we came with an ideal. So maybe the wrong word was used, but we came with an ideal in hopes that you all would take that information and sit down with these groups and figure out how we can get this funding to these groups that are working directly with those that are impacted by the gun violence. Again, we can't speak up for any groups. We were giving you names of groups that we know are working boots on the ground and they are actually doing the work. However, sometimes what they're doing is limited because of limited funding. Also, I would like to speak up on behalf of the Conviction Integrity Unit and Expungement Unit. We know that here in Washtenaw County that this unit is needed. I've been working on a case myself since 2014 of the Veazey brothers that have been incarcerated for something that they did not do since 2005. So it is great to have this integrity unit that can do the checks and balances and ensure that Washtenaw County Prosecutor's Office is operating on a level of justice with thoughtfulness, and that makes sure that we get people for the crimes that they actually did do and free those that are innocent. So again, I do hope that you all fund this integrity unit because it is majorly needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up we have, I'm sorry, I might get this wrong, Roea. Please say your first and last name and correct me so I can get it right next time, and say where you're joining us from.
It's Roea. Everybody calls me Ro. I am calling from Macomb County. I am an attorney, and I'm not saying that to brag or boast. I'm saying that because my husband was wrongfully convicted, and it took me to have an attorney take my money in 2004 to assist overturning my husband's wrongful conviction, and he missed the filing deadline. With that, I decided to go to law school and get my husband out myself. His name is Ramon Ward. Thank God for the Wayne County Conviction Integrity Unit. Just to hear the exonerees tonight is very gratifying. It's hard for me not to talk about this without getting emotional. These platforms are so needed for people like you in your positions. I'm going to echo what everybody said tonight about the CIU and why it's needed. But for the sake of time, someone mentioned checks and balances. That's what CIUs do. Someone, I think they mentioned something about ensuring that new evidence is found to assist with the wrongful conviction. But one thing about a CIU is that they can create policies, procedures to make sure the errors aren't repeated in the future. Without a CIU, you're going to have hundreds and thousands of innocent people in prison. So what does that mean? If someone is sitting in prison that's wrongfully convicted, that means the guilty person is where? Is he still on the street? Does that impact you and your family, your children, your loved ones? So when you talk about a wrongful conviction, let's not forget about the guilty person and where they are. When you wonder why crime rates are so high, you got to wonder, is it because the guilty person is still on the street? Did we miss something? Let's go back. Let's look at this conviction. Let's look at the informant testimony. Let's look at the evidence. Let's make sure we got it right before we just seal the deal and say that this person is innocent, because you can't have one without the other. You can't have a checks and balances about someone being convicted and the case is closed without wondering, why are the crime rates still high in Washtenaw County? Why are the crime rates still high in Wayne County? Well, chances are it's because the guilty person is still in the street. The Michigan Campaign for Justice, where I volunteered in 2009, predicted back then that approximately 27% of Michigan's prison population was innocent. But for them not having the funding, that's why they were still there to work for their wrongful convictions. So when we talk about fair, equal access, balance to justice, you cannot do that. You cannot do that without a CIU. I implore you to, whatever you have to funnel, channel, cut, budget, make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we've got Devin. Devin, first and last name and where you're joining us from.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Devin Meyer, and I am currently residing in Ann Arbor. And again, before I start, I kind of wanted to say this off script. I'm completely and totally inspired by the exonerees, their families, and those who have spoken on their behalf and used their life as a testament. It is inspiring, and I am in awe of your strength and your bravery to speak and advocate for others tonight. So I just wanted to say that first. But tonight, I'm echoing the sentiments that have already been spoken by many on this call about allocating the ARPA funds to grassroots organizations. As Alex and so many others have said, having community members who are involved in the organizations who know the people that they serve can be far more effective and useful in this time that we are in. Word of mouth, community connection, and a drive to serve must take precedence in this time, as it is these grassroots BIPOC community-led organizations that will get things done for their community members. I understand that your guys' decisions are very, very hard, essentially all the time, but funding programs that are devoted to their community in our time of crisis is vital. Again, Ypsilanti 48197, 48198 was hit so hard in our county, the hardest. We know this. So shouldn't their voices be lifted up and listened to the most? If so many people in Ypsilanti and the county as a whole are crying out for support with big issues like COVID relief, gun violence, as others have mentioned, the Conviction Integrity Unit, and general support, it seems that we should prioritize the groups that serve them the most. The ARPA funding can fall under several subheadings you guys have listed, as Ms. Duckworth mentioned in her form. The categories such as investing in our health and well-being, supporting a strong local community, and supporting a strong and local economy. Lastly, we want to ask you to please add another category under your listings called investing in our health and well-being. Having funding to organizations under these categories would help the community immensely. The groups listed in the proposals sent by Ms. Duckworth need your help to achieve their goals and move in the community. Their work is limited by the resources. Our disenfranchised community, especially in the eastern side of the county, needs your help. And empowerment of the community is what we are after, and we believe that this is one of the best ways to achieve that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we've got Kayla. Kayla, first and last name, where you joining us from? Kayla, you should be able to unmute now.
Okay.
There you go. Got it.
My name is Kayla Conrad. I am a resident of Ann Arbor and I am white. I believe the rest of the COVID dollars, all 71 million, must be committed to the Black communities of Washtenaw County. Black people set foot on our shores against their will for our express purpose of exploiting their labor and enriching white people's livelihoods. And here we are, over 400 years later, and Black people are still being treated as if they are fourth or fifth class citizens. I see this tragic legacy reflected in your COVID relief resolution because it continues to put white people first. The past resolution assigned $15 million to majority white communities rather than to Black communities, where poverty is the third highest in the United States, and where a Black person residing in Ypsilanti can expect to live 13 fewer years than a white person living in Ann Arbor, a mere 8 miles away. This is what it means to be white. We are beneficiaries of white privilege, which means that we have whatever is best. Think hospitals, schools, housing, healthcare, and air and water quality. And now this brings me to the importance of the moral values we choose to live by. Moral values played a primary role in recognizing the need for ARPA funding. I believe you missed this when you saw the COVID dollars as an opportunity to pay for longstanding pre-COVID projects. These funds should have gone to our communities under extreme COVID distress. But now we have the opportunity to recognize how COVID substantially increased suffering in our already distressed neighbors. And so I look forward to your identifying your moral values, sharing them with us, and doing the right thing. You can start by committing the rest of the COVID dollars to the Washtenaw County Black communities. This is definitely the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jeremiah. Jeremiah, first and last name, where you're joining us from.
Jeremiah Richardson, Ypsilanti Township. I'm in law enforcement. I've been in law enforcement for 9 years and 6 months. And I do support the Wrongful Conviction Integrity Unit. I do believe that it helps to have another system in place for checks and balances. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Very succinct. All right, next we've got Gary. Gary, first and last name, where are you joining us from?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Gary Muntz, and I'm speaking to you tonight from Linden Township. And I'm speaking on behalf of the Washtenaw County Commission on Aging. Tonight on your Board of Commissioners agenda, you will be voting on approval of the bylaws for the Washtenaw County Commission on Aging. It is my hope that you will approve this final step in the creating of the Commission on Aging. You're to be commended for your foresight in this matter. Your action here tonight will be profound and long-lasting. This will help to secure the health, well-being, and safety of over 72,000 older adults in Washtenaw County today, and nearly double that number in future years. I'd like to stress the importance that all of us should be contributing to the work of the Commission on Aging. To that end, I would tell you that the Commission on Aging meets the first and third Friday of each month, and the meetings are open to the public, and we encourage your participation. The Commission on Aging would also like to thank all of those who are currently working so diligently in providing services to older adults in Washtenaw County, and thank them as well for all of the support they have shown to the Commission on Aging. We all have a shared vision of providing the best possible quality of life for older adults and look forward to making that vision a reality. I thank the commissioners, and I thank all of the service providers who are currently working in Washtenaw County. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, there are no other hands for public comment. I'm gonna close it after a countdown here. So anybody else, this is your last chance before I close it. Going once, twice, 3 times. All right, we're closing public comment. We're gonna move on to commissioner follow-up, to citizen participation. Any commissioners that would like to respond to the comments that we have just heard? I'm going to position you all on my screen, so if you're giving me a physical hand, I'll be able to see it. I cannot move a video while someone's hand is raised. That's new. All right, Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to be somewhat brief in my comments to thank everyone for continuing to engage with us. My top priority as we look forward for me as one commissioner is to find ways to support our Black and Brown residents, and particularly those who are in the areas of lowest economic opportunity throughout our county. I believe that should be our shared goal. It is certainly my goal as one commissioner. I do want to caution us all to sort of think about the fact that we can set a shared goal. We can work towards a common mission, but that may not end up meaning that we agree on exactly how to get that done. So my hope would be that we continue to engage with each other. I'm certainly looking forward to continuing to learn more about specific ideas and hearing more from the idea that was given to us by Trichet and that several of you have advocated for. I'm very open to having further discussion about that and looking forward to it. I've been spending more time with Commissioner Jefferson, learning from him on some issues on the east side of the county, and so that has been very helpful to me. I just want to caution us to make sure that we're working together moving forward in a way that is just understanding that sharing a common goal and working towards common things doesn't mean we'll end up with exactly what everyone agrees with at the end of the day. Each and every one of us may have a different idea of what it looks like to do what we need to on the eastern side of the county. And so I look forward to working with everyone, learning more, having further conversations. I do also want to note that I am very enthusiastically looking forward to supporting the Conviction Integrity Unit position that Prosecutor Savitt has brought to us. The stories of those who have been wrongfully convicted and who've been, particularly those who've been exonerated after spending years incarcerated for crimes that they didn't commit, are truly heartbreaking. And it is incredibly brave of those who are sharing their story so that they can help others get out of a similar situation. Hopefully, in many cases, much sooner than it sounds like some of you have gone through. It is incredibly heartbreaking to hear those stories, and I'm aware of Wayne County's unit that has been very successful in exonerating more than 30, I think 30 or more individuals just in the past 3 years. That is incredible. I personally would certainly rather spend public dollars getting wrongfully convicted individuals out from behind bars rather than paying to keep them there. So I look forward to supporting that and working with Prosecutor Savitt as he continues to work with us to continue that work. I'll leave it at that, but look forward to working with everyone as we look forward to spending more rescue plans in the future. I am very pleased that we are taking the time to have these conversations to slow down the process a bit and to make sure that when we do approve funds in the future, that it is something that is thoroughly community engaged and has received a lot of community input and support. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Labar, you're up.
Thanks, Chair. I'm also looking to forward to supporting the position creation in our prosecutor's office later tonight. I wanted to thank the coalition of nonprofits that have put forward this idea. I think on a broad level, the policy question of addressing problems via small nonprofit and community groups is worthy of consideration. What I think would be helpful, and I put some of this in an email to Ms. Duckworth, would be a bit more detail in terms of how those funds will be used by the nonprofits. Right now, it's sort of under the general umbrella of capacity building. And I think there can be an argument made for that. The question, though, would be 2, 3, 4 years on from now, what is the sustainable impact that we're seeing? And if that's not known, or if that's not measurable at this point, that doesn't mean the idea is invalid. It just means that needs to be spelled out. I appreciate Margaret's proposal that she's emailed us in terms of outreach. I appreciate the process that this board is engaged in so far, particularly the work that our chair has done on that. But I think we will certainly benefit from additional input and engagement, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that. You know, my district is on the east side of Ann Arbor, and so the 4819897 issues are not ones that that I live in my district. So I appreciate the chance to get the input and to get the feedback, and frankly, to just hear from new voices. So I'll look forward to more of that in the future. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any other commissioners? Let's see. Oh, Commissioner Shank, I saw your hand first.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for coming and talking tonight. We've been talking a lot about increased engagement, and so I really appreciate you coming tonight and talking to us and really caring and being engaged around these issues. I want to especially thank Mr. Kenneth Nixon, Mr. Marvin Cotton Jr., and Mr. Eric Anderson for coming and talking to us about a little bit about your experience of being wrongfully convicted. It's horrible that happened, and I am very pleased to be able to support the Conviction Integrity Unit, which I understand is functioning now, and the vote we're taking is to make it more permanent, so long-term funding. And I want you to know that I worked with the prosecutor, Savitt, along with board leadership, as well as our administrator, to make sure that the funding that is allocated will work for the long term. I also want everybody to know that I support funding local grassroots organizations that can show that they're effective in addressing the needs of the 48197 and 48198 area. And I have been working along with other commissioners to understand what each group is doing in the community. I have been meeting with people, and I was doing this. I've been doing this for a while now. So it's not just in response to the suggestion, although it's a great suggestion. I completely agree that we need to be funding grassroots organizations with some of our ARPA money. There are some technicalities that we have to deal with to make sure that it is eligible according to the federal guidelines, and we can work our way through that. So I've been meeting with people and groups to, as many of you had said, with boots on the ground. Now, these meetings, they happen quietly. You might not know about them because it's literally me going to an organization, talking with the people or talking to people in the neighborhood. So I want you to know what's happening. I've missed enough dinners and enough Saturday afternoons with my family that when people come to this meeting and call me immoral, it hurts because I'm really working hard and I am a person. And I considered not saying that because I think everybody wants to see their leaders as strong. But please, we're all people. We're working really, really hard on this stuff. And we really do care. And I think I can speak for the entire board when I say that. So I also want you to know that I have been working really hard to ensure that literacy support is included in the next allocation package. And as I said, these things take a long time to get worked up so that they can qualify for the funds that we've been allocated by the federal government. And on that note, I also want to note that all the money that Ann Arbor got, that Ypsilanti Township got, that all the other townships got, we have nothing to do with that in the sense that we do not control that. That was a decision that was made at the federal government level, and we have no control over that whatsoever. We only have control over the money that Washtenaw County was allocated. And so that is what we are dealing with. I also want you to know that I do support developing a recreation and community center on the east side, as do many of my colleagues. And so there are conversations that are ongoing around that, trying to figure out how to make that work for the community. So that's about all I have to say. I really do appreciate the comments. And I just want everyone to know we are really working hard on this. And I hope that people will be satisfied with the allocation, but in the end, you know, we will be making a decision. I think we're thinking by the end of the year, there will be a lot more conversations around that. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Scott, you're up next.
Thanks, Chair. I want to note when I started the meeting, I think I pointed that out to my colleagues. I had to pick up my kid from his athletic practice and take him to home. And he was in the car then for the first part of the meeting with the public comment. And I love that he is part of that process of hearing from people in the community. And I think it was especially eye-opening to him to hear people talk about being wrongfully convicted and being in jail for 15 years under a wrongful conviction. He looked at me at that point and said, "That's longer than I've been alive." And I could see how that impacted him. This is how we make a new generation of people who are willing to work for change too. So you didn't just impact us tonight as a Board of Commissioners with your words and your honesty and your truth. You impacted a new generation of people thinking about what that meant too. So thank you so much for coming. I am very excited about the CIU and supporting that. I have been excited since Ellie Savitt decided he would run for prosecutor about things like this being able to happen in the county. And so I'm happy that this has come up tonight, and I'm really happy that we're able to vote on it. I also want to note that, you know, when we're talking about the rest of the ARPA money and the funds, I have ideas. I always have ideas. Like since I was a kid, I've been an imaginer. And so I have ideas about what we can do with this money, but I really am humble enough to know that I don't know what it's like to live in a neighborhood where you hear gunshots regularly. I don't know what it's like to go to a school where you have to go through a metal detector to go to school. I don't know what it's like to go to a school where you don't have school supplies that you need to go to school, or where there's not toilet paper in the stalls when you go to the bathroom. I don't know those things. I don't know what it's like to live in a neighborhood where there's not a grocery store that has things stocked on the shelves. I am eager to make the structural change here in the county so more people can say they don't know that. I want to do those things, and I appreciate Trisha Duckworth coming, and the emphasis that what she gave to us was just that, a proposal, and that she is supporting the process of what we have to do for our next steps. I too, like Commissioner Schenk, I want to go out and see things and understand more and have impact from the community, because I don't know those things. I want to hear from people in the community about what they need. I can tell them my ideas and they can say that won't work, Katie, or that's a good idea. We were thinking something similar. I want to understand those things. So please support or invite me to those things as well. If I can be there, I will be there. Unlike some of the people I'm on the board with, I do, however, work a full-time job and I am a shift worker. So I work as a nurse, and it means I go to work at 7 a.m. and I work till 7:30, and I can't leave in the middle of the day or flex my schedule to come to events. Oftentimes I'm working on the weekend because I'm off during the week to be at these meetings. But that being said, please invite me, and if I can be there, I will. I am an extrovert who loves people and dreams of making change in the world. It means I want to go there. So, and I want to make change here in Washtenaw County, and I want to do that for the people in 48197 and 48198. And I firmly support the process we have going forward. And I'm very excited about the possibility of doing so and making those changes. Thank you, everyone who came to the meeting to talk to us. And we'll look forward to your continued engagement as we keep doing this. And don't forget to send me an email and ask me to come to learn more about your organization. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other commissioners want to respond to public comment? Commissioner Beeman.
Thank you, Chair. I also want to thank everyone who came forward and spoke this evening, especially our exonerees. It's such an emotional process, and I can't even fathom what life was like. And so I also am in support of this initiative from our prosecutor's office, and look forward to working and moving on that. Also, those who have spoken for the grassroots organizations and supporting efforts within the 48197, 48198 zip codes. I'm just going to echo everyone else's thoughts here, and that we do want to engage, and we do want to find a way to make this work and to create those connections with the grassroots organizations that are on the ground and doing the work. For years, I worked in downtown Ypsilanti, right on Michigan Ave in the former Key Bank building. I worked with small businesses. I worked with BIPOC businesses during the Great Recession. And so I can only imagine what COVID has done to those entrepreneurs now. I still am in the world of entrepreneurship, small businesses. That's my day job. And I would love to see initiatives that support those business owners that were greatly hit and impacted, as we know that our small businesses are the backbone of America, and they employ our neighbors, and they give back to schools, and they are just really, community, like the keystone of the community. They really hold it up versus the larger corporations and things that we're seeing right now, who aren't as invested in their employees. And so I welcome the opportunity to also explore that avenue and how we can work again with more BIPOC business owners and supporting their efforts as they recover after COVID. So again, thank you to everyone who spoke, and please keep engaging with us.
Thank you. Any other commissioners would like to respond to public comment? Going once. Commissioner Jefferson.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, I'm real grateful tonight to hear voices speaking for those communities of low income, low opportunity, very low income, very low opportunity on the eastern part of the county. I think it's kind of a new thing since the 60s. During the 60s, the county created the Washtenaw Opportunity Economic Office. And therefore, we had quite a bit of progress in doing some things for disadvantaged children and families and for homeowners. So now we're here again where we're starting to hear those voices more than ever before since the 60s. And there's a reason for that. The things that have been happening since the 60s in our communities have been really not, well, let's say disinvested. Yeah, they've been disinvested. You know, we talk about being in communities where shootings happening and where shots are fired. Yeah, I remember those days back in the 60s, late 60s, when there were riots in Detroit and we had to be locked down here in Ypsilanti. I remember the heroin epidemic, in which a lot of the people that left for Vietnam in my community didn't come back, or they came back addicted on heroin. You know, there was the time when we were really moving along as far as being able to get jobs because of the auto industry and those industries that surrounded it. But they're not there anymore. That is a big gap that has to be filled. Jobs, economic development, and education and training and skills. And so those things were pretty prevalent in the Black community back then. But since then, we've had a flight. We've had a flight of the people who are in the community had children that they took to other schools, which brought our district to a point where now we're struggling for those dollars that come from the state. And so with all those who spoke tonight about what's happening in my community, you know, I've been serving my community since 1990. And I can't tell you how many times I walked into a hospital for a person who was OD'd or had just been shot and as disfigured as you could ever see in any horror film. That's not something that we talk about a lot, but it's being talked about now for a reason. And that's because there's the time for investment. When these voices are rising up and continue to rise up, we all have to rise up. I commend Commissioner Sink, Commissioner Morgan, for coming into the community and having a frank conversation with a group of people and myself the other day. The things that they learned that day was something that I knew if they heard them, they would understand even better. The opportunities are not here for us, and that we have to find ways to make those opportunities happen. It's one thing to hear about it, but when I saw the interaction of the conversations going on that day, I realized that any one of you, if you need to talk with someone or you want to talk with people in our community, I'm there. As a matter of fact, this Saturday at 12 noon at Park Ridge Park, you're welcome to come out and be with a group of people who believes that it takes the hood to save the hood. Grassroots. You know, in 2019, January, I brought to the commission my dismay with the way that community was getting funding from those funders that we allow ourselves to allocate dollars to. Since then, there has been an exit of Ann Arbor Community Foundation, and I just saw some allocations that they're doing in the email today. I commend them for that, but there's still some missing groups within that, and there's still not enough dollars within that. You know, it's okay to throw thousands at the Eastern County, but we need millions. We need millions. There's ways to do that. We talked about a possibility of creating a Wi-Fi network within the Eastern County. It doesn't cost as much as $15 million, but it costs millions. We talked about having some after-school programs that work with dealing with children on social skills, leadership skills, academics, and dealing with mental illness. I've heard today, 3 people have died in shootings. There was actually 4, and then there was 2 that OD'd. So it's not just the shootings that's going on. It's the overall disparate of hope of having opportunities to move forward in our communities. Our commission has gotten this information sent to us consistently, and I hope that it continues consistently until we understand that this is a time that this commission is going to have to do what we say we are, and that is make racial equity the main staple of what we use as far as making sure that we allocate funds to where it's most needed. We are the safety net. And the safety net is supposed to take care of those who are vulnerable and who have less opportunity. So with those who spoke tonight about the integrity unit, I know people who are incarcerated for years and have been looking for ways to find a way to get home because they're innocent. Speaking with our prosecutor, our chief prosecutor, I understand that this integrity unit is going to have in their hands information that others who have tried to get these young men out of prison don't have access to. To not allow the best possibility to happen so that these men can become free is to be a part of the crime. And it is a crime to wrongfully convict somebody because you rob them of their freedom. I remember sitting in a state police car, walking home at 10 o'clock at night. Somebody had done something up ahead while I was walking towards that way. By the time I got to where the crime was committed, I was stopped, put in the car, and questioned about some robberies that were happening at some convenience stores. Then I was taken and put in a cell. And at that time, all I could think of, there was a splitting hair decision that could have been made on whether I was going to be charged with robbing convenience stores. I'm working every day, raising 2 daughters. I just happened to be walking at the wrong time. So I commend you guys for your faith, for keeping your faith and your will to survive and to be productive citizens willingly and come up here to us and talk with integrity and with pride about who you are, because justice is supposed to be able to stop future crime. But what we're trying to do now with this integrity unit is to make sure that we stop future crimes of wrong conviction. So I just wanted to make sure that all of you know that the dollars that we have in this ARP funding has to be within the guidelines of the Treasury. All of the ideas that I've heard are things that can be worked on. All the ideas that I've heard about increasing the way that we do outreach. Thank you, Ms. Frankler, for the email. I just read some of those ideas. Those are workable ideas, and they're great ideas. We are being, as a commissioner, changed on how we do business with the county. And change is not easy. I understand that. I stand with each and every commissioner who is willing to listen and to make sure that that change that happens is well within what the community wants. I just received an email this week, a discussion about a YMCA, and been talking about this for years, since 2011 when I was on city council. There's always an obstacle when it comes to something being invested on the Eastern County. And as was said before, it's not in other commissioners' districts, so they really don't have a vested interest. But if you don't deal with what the problems are happening in Eastern County, people are suffering. People are suffering every day. There is a feasibility study that's supposed to be given to us about that YMCA. And I believe it was due this month. I haven't seen it yet. What's the holdup? You know, our community, and when we asked people about this as a Parks and Rec commissioner, came back saying they wanted recreational activities, swimming pool, things like that. And there was nothing in there about a YMCA. And I want you to understand that. When I talk to some of those leaders within the community, they believe that that wouldn't give the community what it needs, which is a place like a community center, a rec center, something that doesn't edge them out because of the price. You know, I'm a viewer of a lot of comedians in this era. One comedian said that the new Jim Crow is to price Black people out. So I just want you to understand that this is something that, you know, as a teenager, has been a part of my life since the days of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy's assassination. Ever since that day, ever since those days, I've understood the problems that we deal with as far as racism and discrimination can only be dealt with when everything that is supposed to be given to help those who are in need is fought for. Nothing in the civil rights was given, it had to be fought for. And so if that's what we have to learn to do as a commission together, then we need to fight for it. I mean, these voices are not here out of coincidence. These voices are here because people are hurting. This Saturday at 12 noon, Park Ridge, right there at the Park Ridge Pavilion in the park. I look for anyone that wants to come. And believe me, there's no need to fear in my community. The shootings that are happening are not random. And they're not just wild out yet. But if we don't get a hold of this and start putting money into these grassroots, into these, we talk about how they have to have certain criteria and established, and they have, and maybe it's just building capital. So all of those things are something that we talk about, but there's ways to get around that. I watch these grassroots and I listen to them and I hear the stories that they tell me about how they talk to children. How a teenage boy who does a shooting because it's retaliated, and then he gets retaliated and says, when the guys are talking to him about changing his life, he didn't know that there were people out here that talk to him like that. So there are people like that that need the finances to continue to walk into these families, walk into these homes, deal with these parents, deal with these children, and find the way to allow them to trust them so that then they can come to the county for resources. They're not coming to the county, and if county organizations and nonprofits go to these families, they don't trust them. They trust people who have been in their community who have not been funded as grassroots organizations and as grassroots nonprofit groups. That's who they trust. To build that trust at that level will give us an opportunity for people to speak up and say that they need help. They're not doing it now because they don't trust government. They don't trust politicians. So we're definitely in need of trying to find a way to help these grassroots companies come up so that they can have an impact on the lives that if we don't do something about the shootings, they're getting worse. we need to make sure that we have some opportunities for our children to have a daily and weekend safe space to go to. And I don't believe that that's going to happen unless we all understand we need to put millions instead of thousands into Eastern County. Children are dying. Mothers are burying children. People are leaving this earth with no hope. But we can give them that. I believe we can do that starting today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have comments before we move along? Before I close, Commissioner follow-up. Going once? Twice? Okay, we're going to move it along. I want to thank everybody, as always, for calling in to give public comment. No, it's certainly not easy. And sticking to that 3-minute time limit can be a challenge. I would encourage people to continue to call in to give public comment, and you get even better at sticking to that 3 minutes. I especially want to thank everyone that's exonerees coming to share bits of their story and their families. I would invite people to stay on for the rest of the meeting, because as you can see that we are voting on this meeting, the Conviction Integrity Unit. And I would also say that, I think it's clear from the responses by the commissioners that we are taking the very serious, the rise in gun violence very seriously. As Commissioner Schenck mentioned, many of us are having conversations with grassroots organizations and nonprofits about what can we do to respond to that. A lot of us are looking at very creative ways to try to attack some of these problems from a systemic perspective. Things like guaranteed basic income, for example, or guaranteed income. People are looking at all kinds of things. So one thing I would point out is people tune into the meeting, I think, and expect to see a lot of work. And a lot of work does happen here. We vote on a lot of things, but we're all doing work in between these couple of month meetings that we have. And a lot of that is just things you can't really see, right? Because you can't follow us around all the time and see what's happening. But there is a lot of work that's happening. And then what you see when you tune into these meetings are the fruition of that work. So I encourage people to continue making their voices heard and continue watching what we're doing and sharing your thoughts. With that, I'm going to turn over to Chair Schenck, because we have a couple of items that are special and have to be taken out of order today.
Thank you, Chair Hodge. The first item is a resolution that we will be voting on at the Board of Commissioners meeting later this evening. And that will recognize October as Cooperative Month in Washtenaw County. So there are people on the call representing different co-ops in our community, and we wanted to read the resolution while they're still on the call. And so Commissioner Labar kindly invited me to read the resolution. Whereas cooperative business, well, let me go back a second. A resolution recognizing October 2021 as Co-op Month. Whereas cooperative businesses are a unique form of collaborative business which exists in large numbers throughout the United States and the world, and whereas 120 million U.S. residents are a member of 48,000 U.S. co-ops and more than 700 million people are co-op members in over 100 countries, and whereas cooperative businesses in Michigan employ thousands of people and contribute billions of dollars to Michigan's economy every year and remain in the state through good times and bad, and whereas there are cooperative businesses in nearly every sector of the U.S. economy in agriculture, finance, childcare, energy, housing, food, education, retail, and more. And whereas cooperatives in Michigan in the Washtenaw County area are local self-help businesses that combine free enterprise with social benefits to the community. And whereas co-op members own, use, and run their businesses. And whereas cooperative businesses operate by a set of principles which provide a model of responsiveness to the consumer and the community that all businesses and governments can emulate and include voluntary and open membership, democratic member control, members' economic participation, autonomy and independence, education and training about the benefits and practices of cooperation, cooperation among cooperatives, and concern for community. And whereas the Washtenaw County community has been served by a large number and wide variety of cooperative businesses for many years, including but not limited to the Intercooperative Council at the University of Michigan, which supplies student housing, University of Michigan Credit Union, Lake Trust Credit Union, Michigan Educational Credit Union, Dearborn Financial Credit Union, Stone School Cooperative Nursery, Dexter Nursery Co-op, First United Methodist Cooperative Nursery, People's Food Co-op in Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti Food Co-op, Farm Bureau, which supplies insurance, Midwest Organic Food Co-op, Forest Hills Cooperative Housing, Arrowwood Hills Cooperative Housing, Pine Lake Village Cooperative, St. David's Co-op Apartments, REI, True Value Hardware Stores, Ace Hardware Stores, Sassafras Tech Collective, Potter's Guild, University Townhouses, and the Hive Co-op. And whereas True Value, Ace Hardware, and other similar cooperatives allow small, locally owned businesses to compete with corporate entities such as Home Depot and Lowe's by buying and marketing collectively. And whereas October is Co-op Month, first so designated in 1948 by the Minnesota Association of Cooperatives and celebrated by co-ops throughout the United States as a time to honor the service to their members and their communities provided by cooperative businesses, and therefore be it resolved that the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners hereby recognizes and honors the cooperative businesses that serve the Washtenaw community and encourages city residents to explore the benefits of participating in cooperative businesses. And I do believe that we have a representative from the ICC who perhaps would like to make comments. Oh, nobody is going to make comments for the cooperatives tonight. Commissioners, I wonder if you would, and if anybody has any comments to add. I don't see anybody's hand up. If your hand is up, and okay, Commissioner Labar.
Cheers, thanks so much for facilitating this. I just wanted to give Nick Coquillard a thank you. He's the executive director there for the co-ops and furnished the language. I think this is the 5th or 6th year that we've done this, and very much appreciate the support. I know we all have co-ops in our district, and so thanks for the chance to highlight them.
Thank you, Commissioner Labar. There are a couple of co-ops in that list that are near and dear to my heart. So I'm very thankful for co-ops. Okay. Next, we are going to have a presentation from AAATA, and Matt Carpenter, Director of the RIDE, is here to address the board about upcoming decisions regarding the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority, also known as AAATA services. While this is part of the county administrator's report to the Board of Commissioners tonight, there is a conflicting meeting later, so Matt has joined us early to give his presentation. Matt, you're up.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the Board of Commission, and thank you for your time. After this meeting, I'm going to bounce to the Ann Arbor Transportation Commission, so I do appreciate putting me forward. If you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen. And can someone give me a head nod?
Looking good.
You can see the presentation. Wonderful, thank you so much. Well, as was mentioned, my name is Matthew Carpenter. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority. We are, of course, the RIDE. We're the largest transit agency in Washtenaw County, primarily serving the Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti areas, but pretty much every one of your districts sees some level of service from us or one of the smaller agencies that we pass through funding for. Some of you may know that we've been working on a new long-range plan now for several months, and we've reached a really important juncture in that process. And I wanted to stop by this evening and give you guys an update, a brief overview of that material. Like I say, because it touches every one of your districts. And as I look at many of your commissioners here, I'm happy to say I've worked closely with several of you on issues in your various jurisdictions. So my ask of you this evening is very modest. I really appreciate your time and attention. You have a lot on your plate. I listened to many of those public comments earlier, and you certainly have a lot to think about. I'd love to see if there's any feedback you have after the presentation. I'd love to take it this evening. And as we kick off a major part of our public involvement this month, if there's anything any of you can do to help spread the word about this latest step for us, we certainly would appreciate it. So our long-range plan here is about transit over the next 25 years in our urban core area of Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti. It touches on a variety of subjects you see there on the screen. How we set up and structure a transit plan is a good question, and we're working through that. One of the things we think is very important at the beginning of a process like this is to have a clear set of priorities and goals for a project. And as we looked around our communities, and plural, because we have 3 members of the authority, that's the city of Ann Arbor, city of Ypsilanti, Ypsilanti Township, but we also serve Pittsfield Township, Superior Township, Scioto Township, and a little bit of Ann Arbor Township. We saw a lot of commonalities in the aspirations, many of which were similar to things we heard earlier tonight. Everyone has, I think, a renewed interest in social equity in a variety of areas throughout our society, whether that's social equity in terms of jurisprudence or equity in terms of access to jobs, access to education. We heard a little bit about earlier, access to affordable housing. Sometimes that's helping the environment, cleaning, reducing air pollution and the impact of the transportation sector, or helping workers get to jobs, or helping employers find workers these days. We found a lot of commonality between our member municipalities, their stated plans, and organizations like you, like the county, Watts, whom we participate with, the Ann Arbor DDA and other DDAs. We all share many of these aspirations in common, and those are really how we derive our goals. Transportation, as they say, is 25% of everything, and we see ourselves as playing an important supporting role as our member communities work to advance all of these aspirations. Just to give one example, the Ann Arbor A20 climate plan has some very aggressive aspirations for how public transit ridership could grow in our community. Other economic development and equity work that we've heard about in various parts of the community, for example, the Ypsilanti sustainability plan mirrors some of those same things. So we take our cue from you, the residents, and from the other municipalities in the area when we set the goals for our community. And our number one goal here is ridership, because if we are attracting more riders and more people are finding the system attractive and useful, we figure we must be doing something right. So we're structuring our technical work here really based around what we've heard from the public. And I know some of you have participated in some of our earlier workshops earlier this year, and thank you for that. We heard a lot of great things from people throughout the community, whether abstract or very specific. At this crucial stage this month, what we've done is begun to release some very specific proposals that we're asking the community to provide some reaction to. Those proposals are presented in a term of escalating scenarios of increasing amount of benefits that public transit could provide throughout the community. So our baseline, we have 4 scenarios, as I've said. The baseline scenario I'll touch on very quickly, but these really primarily focus on our fixed route service, which is our most visible service. I'm sure you've all seen the ride buses around our various communities, but there are other services as well that I will also touch on very briefly. So the RIDE is one of those unique organizations in our community that already, I think, makes a big contribution to equity on a pretty daily basis. We move thousands of people back and forth across US 23 between the various parts of our community every day. And we've been doing that for decades, and we'll continue to do that very happily. That is part of our mission. In this first scenario, we're calling this kind of a baseline status quo, or if you will, a do nothing option. This represents the reality that if our community continues to grow and public transit stays roughly the same as it is today, we're going to start to relatively fall behind. Our ridership may grow slightly, but it isn't going to be able to grow as fast as the community does. So our ridership per capita, and that's one of our key performance measures, and we share that with Watts actually, that begins to fall behind. We will be capable of some minor adjustments over the years, and we're already very fortunate to have such a supportive community. We already have a large number of people and businesses within a reasonable walking distance to a high frequency bus line, but those numbers will begin to shrink as the community expands. But I guess the upside, if you look at it this way, of this scenario is that it will not require any additional funding beyond what we already receive through property taxes. There is a second scenario. In this scenario, we see a modest increase in investment in public transit. And as a result, our service and the ridership that we see grows as fast as the population. So this basically is holding steady in terms of ridership per capita. The benefit that we're able to provide throughout the community grows proportionately the same, 1.5% a year, perhaps, as the communities that we serve. There are some exciting options in this scenario. We're seriously considering the potential for a new express bus service between the Ypsilanti Transit Center and the Ann Arbor Transit Center. That could take a 45-minute trip down to perhaps a half an hour. And that would really bring our two communities, I think, even closer together in many ways. And more people could be, within a convenient walking distance to a bus route, but it would require a small increase in the local millage. And as we say, all this does is manage to keep up with population growth. We start to introduce new tactics and strategies with scenario 2. And I'd like to just briefly mention transit priority. There's a variety of things that we can do in this area, from playing with the traffic signals to help us get a little bit of preference when we're passing through intersections, up to and including dedicated bus lanes, which, if you're familiar with dedicated bike lanes, is basically the same principle but wider. We generally just use those at choke points, however. The intent of transit priority is to make transit even more attractive and competitive to the personal automobile. We are floating, and this is a bit provocative perhaps, some very specific ideas of if we were to do transit priority or dedicated bus lanes in 10, 20 years from now, where would they be? Most of our choke points are in the most congested part of our service area, which right now is downtown Ann Arbor. So you see here a map of potential areas for priority locations, possibly including dedicated bus lanes. This is, we expect, a somewhat provocative map, and we're interested to hear feedback. I should note that we also see the potential for some dedicated bus lanes all the way down Washtenaw Avenue to the city of Ypsilanti. Scenario 3 is where we really start to be able to produce meaningful results for those plans that many of you have helped to author, the A20 plan, the county's plans for equity. At this point, we're able to afford to increase services and therefore ridership faster than the population is growing. So this means we become more and more attractive, more viable means of getting around town. At this point, we begin to introduce serious alternatives like bus rapid transit that I'll speak about in a moment. You can see that red line on the map there is a new service, again, connecting our two communities. Even more of our community is within a really close walking distance of a high frequency connection, but this will of course require a larger tax increase. Bus rapid transit is something many of you have probably heard about before. We sometimes call it a train on tires. It's the general idea of being able to provide a rapid transit level of service at a much lower cost using existing infrastructure and technology. Scenario 4 is our most aspirational or a bit ambitious scenario, you might say. At this point, we really start to see a lot of the benefits that transit is able to provide for climate change, for social equity, for economic development. But this represents the highest level of growth we can reasonably foresee here in this area. It's a transformational change to the entire transit system. There is now not only bus rapid transit as there were in the previous ones, but now we're actually talking about the potential for dedicated bus lanes, not just from Ypsilanti to downtown Ann Arbor, but through downtown to the west side of Ann Arbor, and then a second BRT line north-south from the north side of Ann Arbor to the south side. We see increased frequency on buses throughout all of our communities here, so virtually everywhere becomes a high-frequency bus network. 93% of the people who live in our communities will now be within a short walk to a high-frequency bus route. And for a lot of our communities where social isolation or lack of access to jobs is a concern, this is the scenario that provides the greatest benefit to connecting them to opportunities for education, for training, for employment, for social activities, for groceries, not just in their immediate area, but throughout the entire area. But of course, this does represent also the largest investment that we would be suggesting. We're trying to do our best to quantify and qualify these various scenarios so that when folks like yourselves and the public get to see them, you have something to react to. You can see in this table, we've tried to classify the general attributes of these various scenarios. You can see, obviously, the higher up you go, the more benefits you have, the more ridership you have, the more service, but also the higher the cost. And you can see that in the middle of the table there with some very conceptual mill rates. And this really speaks to another part of this project, which is to try to get a sense of not just what people in this community would like to see from public transit, but frankly, how much they're willing to pay. As I mentioned before, in addition to those scenarios for our fixed route service, there are several other services and programs that we offer that we're floating ideas for. Most of these can be dealt with sort of in a one-off way. They don't necessarily relate to those scenarios I just presented, but we need feedback on areas like our paratransit service, which is door-to-door service for persons with disabilities. We're interested in people's feedback about our participation in land use and transit-oriented development decisions throughout our communities. There's a lot of exciting changes right now in the area of new mobility and new technologies, and we're very interested in getting feedback on people's aspirations there. And of course, there's opportunities to collaborate with some of our major partners, the Regional Transit Authority and the university. Which brings me to a slide I think is important for all of you here on the County Commission. One of the things we hear a lot about is the need for labor mobility, particularly bringing people into our community, not just from Ypsilanti to Ann Arbor or vice versa, but from Livingston County, from Metro Detroit, from Chelsea. We foresee the need not just for the small park and ride and express bus service we have today, which is primarily on the peripheral freeway ring around Ann Arbor. We see the need for a second ring much further out, 20 miles away, perhaps, with parking lots of 1,000 stalls or more. So we're proposing, again, just to get people's feedback, a second ring where you see 5 different spokes on a wheel, where you see very large parking lots and high levels of highway coach service. You see a picture there of the type of vehicle we would be considering, where we would be bringing thousands of people a day from Chelsea, Saline, Canton, Brighton into the Ann Arbor area. We're also proposing new services similar to this for the Ypsilanti area. If you look on this map, you'll see a light blue line, actually a couple of them. Those are proposals for these sorts of express bus services from the Ypsilanti Transit Center into Western Wayne County, roughly the Canton area, but maybe points further as well, and into Detroit. We aspire someday to be able to provide Ypsilanti with a direct connection to the airport and then on to the city of Detroit as well. I'm happy to let you know that this week, actually, we were able to restart our Detroit to Ann Arbor service. So for the first time in probably 30 years, our metro area has direct daily, hourly scheduled bus service between here and downtown Detroit. So that's a small step in the right direction, but I am happy to let you know that we've moved on that one. Again, thanks to our partners as well, the Regional Transit Authority. So we're asking folks throughout the community in our public meetings and online surveys what they like about these scenarios, what they don't like about these scenarios. Would they like to mix and match between them? Is there something we've missed that they would like us to take into consideration? And then finally, what's the right balance between the benefits that we all aspire to, whether they be for social equity, environmental improvements, or economic advancement? What's the right balance between all those benefits and cost? Because we want to be upfront and transparent with our communities that investments are required if we're going to reap the benefits. So in closing, Madam Chair, we really thank you for your time this evening. I'm very happy to answer any questions if you have any. But just in closing, we really are launching a public involvement push this month, and we'd be very glad to have you, anyone listening, participate in our public meetings coming up. take an online survey. And if any of you have an interest, I'm certainly willing to speak with you myself. So with that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your presentation. And I wonder if you could take down your screen sharing so that I can see people's hands. I see a few going up. I think Commissioner Morgan's may have gone up first. Not sure. Sometimes it's a little hard to tell on Zoom.
Thank you, Chair. I'm certainly very enthusiastic about transit. I think we need more of it, and we need it accessible for more people. So thank you very much for this, Matt. I have many more things I'd love to chat about with you that I won't bring up right now. I'll just ask sort of one main question, and then, but I just want to say I really like that you have a multitude of plans, a whole variety of options. I think you are starting the conversation in the right way, and you are having the right conversation and really trying to understand that tough balance between service provision and the amount that people want or are willing or can afford to pay for them. The one question I do have, which is just, are there federal or state resources that we can try and look to in the meantime, or in addition to this conversation, to try and help fund some of the larger infrastructure components of these plans? Are there areas that we could be helpful as the board with so much state and federal money available and potentially available? You know me, I always want to try and find money elsewhere if we can before spending money from our own residents, but I think you're having the right conversation. So that's my main question.
Sure, thank you for that. And somebody else's money is always our preferred starting point as well. The transportation sector is very fortunate that Washington, D.C. has for decades provided opportunities for joint funding of services. And the county has already been helpful. A few months ago, some of you may remember the sudden reemergence of federal earmarks, a development that I had to dust off some very old binders of mine to remember how to do that. But Greg was thoughtful enough to help us with letters of support for some projects. Not successful in this first round, but we really appreciated it. We were seeking support from Congresswoman Dingell to upgrade the Ypsilanti Transit Center, which is still one of our highest capital priorities. Commissioner Jefferson may be reassured to hear that. We weren't successful this time, but we're going to keep trying at it. And the Detroit to Ann Arbor bus service that's just started operating this week is entirely funded by state grants. And we need to say thank you to the Regional Transit Authority and MDOT for that. So absolutely, we will be leveraging as much federal and state funding for transportation as we can. I frankly would like to get a reputation as being a money hog in the transit industry and just being able to bring home as much of that to this area as we can. However, at the end of the day, there's a direct connection between the amount of local funds that you can raise and the amount of federal and state funds that you can leverage, particularly for some of these very large capital projects, the bus rapid transit lines. We are spitballing at about $85 million each in capital costs alone. We're fortunate enough that the feds will pick up about 50% of that, MDOT usually 10 to 15, but we're going to have to bring the rest. So there is definitely always a role for local funding. I'm not sure who calls the next question.
Oh, I can. I just wanted to make sure you were finished talking. I appreciate that. That was going to be one of my questions. So anyway, Commissioner Hodge.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Matt, for the presentation. I appreciate all the detail and how vigorously you're seeking public engagement. I got 3 mailers today from you guys. I'm like, oh, they really want that feedback. So I got a few questions. One of them is, you mentioned that between the different scenarios that you outlined, there might be the potential to mix and match some of the different features between them. So to what extent is that possible, and how would that work? Because I mean, that's going to affect the cost probably pretty significantly.
Sure. We're not putting any constraints on any of the feedback. If you like one element of scenario 1, but really would prefer to see it paired with something out of scenario 4, go ahead and tell us. We're not giving any constraints on that. And if you've got a great plan for nuclear powered hovercraft, sure, throw that in too. We'll take a look. We're running an iterative planning process so that we can adapt on the fly to whatever the community may come up with. So these scenarios that we're presenting this month, I think I may have referred to them as straw men. They're really there to spur discussion, to get people thinking about. I guess sometimes it's easier when you have concrete things to react to rather than more abstract concepts. So we're trying to spark thoughts, spur conversation. I frankly do not expect a final recommendation, probably early next year, to look anything like these 4 scenarios today. I suspect the next iteration will be based on the feedback we get this month, a 5th iteration that's wholly different than this. And from that, we'll begin to slowly narrow down the options until we come up with sort of one preferred vision for transit that everyone can get behind.
Excellent. Okay, so then my next question is around that, some of the plans to go outside of Washtenaw County or go further out. What would the financing structure look like? Because I know we've had some serious challenges with regional transit in the past.
That's an excellent question. And one of the things that we have behind that slide when we do our public meetings is a quick passing mention of the trickiness of funding those sort of intermunicipal or inter-county services. We've been working hard with the RTA to make sure our 2 planning processes talk with each other, because they're a potential source of funding for this. We've both agreed, let's just figure out the right thing to do, and then we'll figure out whose responsibility is and who will pay for it. One of the big challenges for public transit in Michigan, and I think the county probably understands this, for any network that crosses municipal borders, when we're so beholden to the property tax, that creates a very hyper-local way of thinking about costs and benefits. And when you have something like a transit network that its function is to cross borders and deliver benefits that are more than the sum of the parts, that kind of thinking, frankly, isn't sufficient. So, a great example is Livingston County. Although it's outside of our county, it's the hardest nut to crack, if you will. Tens of thousands of people come down US 23 every day to work at the university. For us, that's a very tempting market. We'd love to be able to serve that. But I have spoken to the Livingston County Board of Commissioners, along with MDOT Director Paul Adjuba. We were not successful in getting them to buy into the idea of taxing themselves for public transit. So it's difficult to see how we would pay for something, even if it was physically located in Washtenaw County. It benefits Livingston County residents. I think we have an easier time of it here within the county because of the support of organizations like you. But overcoming those property tax created hurdles isn't easy. But I think the RTA definitely provides one opportunity to do that. The university also provides another, simply because so many of those commuters are going to be going to the university. We may be able to, frankly, swing a deal with them that makes sense for everybody.
Okay, interesting. So I look forward to learning more about that. So the next one is not necessarily nuclear powered hovercrafts I'm asking about, but I am interested in hearing if there's any discussion around autonomous vehicles and how this might work with what we expect to be seeing in growth with that in the area.
Sure. We have specific sections of the work that are dealing with that. I couldn't do it justice here just for the sake of brevity. It's a really emerging field. It's very interesting. We have to acknowledge that there's a lot of potential in a lot of these emerging technologies, but there's also a lot of risk, and the path forward is not really clear yet. Certainly a few years ago, bike share really looked like a great idea. And then you may recall just before the pandemic, pictures of lots of bikes in rivers. That was a real problem. Uber and Lyft were a hot commodity in 2019. Nowadays, I think there's more of a realization that if their venture capital runs out, those services just disappear. I saw a news article in MLive the other day about that robotic delivery drone that's been sort of trundling around downtown Ann Arbor. They just pulled it entirely. They're shipping them all to Austin. So it's a real tough field to crack. We're going to keep taking swings at it. We've worked with the university. We've worked with several other companies in the past, and we're going to keep tinkering with it until we find some way for all of these new technologies to have a meaningful impact in a sustainable way. Because at the end of the day, this is a subsidized service. We want to make sure we're delivering the most benefit to the right people.
All right. Last question for me. Can you tell me a little bit about the social equity framework that you referred to a few times? So I know that the pandemic bus routes or those changes were not really good for people in my district. I got a lot of complaints about that. So I would want to know more about what is the framework we're using to measure social equity, and how do we make sure that we don't have a similar kind of situation in the future?
Sure. The pandemic was a challenge. I don't pretend to say that it was our best response to everything, but I also confess that this is my first global pandemic. So if we stumbled, I certainly apologize. I am also proud to say that we never shut down our transit system. We did see services in Lansing and Saginaw completely roll up the carpet for several weeks or even months in some cases. So even though we had to operate a much reduced level of service, we're proud that we did operate service. I'm also happy to let you know that at the end of August, we restored all of our services back to where they were. I think we have one or two things we're still mopping up, but that's really at this point driven by labor availability. We are very close to being short of drivers. We're able to keep our noses just above water, but as many of you would probably understand, it's a daily battle. Going forward, we're really talking about how to increase these services, not just in one part of our community, but in all of them. We see a lot of needs on the east side, on the west side that we could meet if we had more resources. So notwithstanding some of the difficult decisions we had to make over the last year, we're very happy to be back to full service. I'm happy to tell you our ridership's back about 50% of pre-pandemic levels, which for us is really good. And we really want to be an even bigger asset for the community. So I hope that answers your question as best as I can.
I would want to know more about the social equity framework, but if that's like a better conversation, or if you want to send me some documents and have another conversation about that's fine too.
I'll be happy to forward it on. Our board has given us specific objectives, and I will forward those along.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hodge. Do other commissioners wish to speak? And if you do, okay, thank you. I can't see the official hand raise. I can see your actual hand. So I think Commissioner Jefferson and then Commissioner Scott.
Commissioner Scott was first. I saw it.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Commissioner Scott and then Commissioner Jefferson. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jefferson. Thank you, Chair. Hi, Matt. And thank you for being here. A great presentation. I love transit. Anything I can do where I can get to where I'm going and read a book at the same time is on my list of favorite things to do. And I was really lucky to spend time living in Dublin in Ireland and took the bus everywhere. I could go everywhere in the country on a bus or a train, except for the county where my family was from, when no trains ran and the bus didn't run on Sunday. But that's all right. It was still a community experience, and we got to hear people announcing that, George McGee had lost his sheep and keep an ear out for it. So you learn a lot of things on the bus. In any case, I think that the plans are interesting. And of course, I love the most expanded plan because I always love the most. But I'm wondering, you had discussion about expanding the services, and I really liked the outer ring idea as well. Is there discussion about expanding service time? And I really ask this just so you understand where I'm coming from a labor perspective, because those buses run like really clearly for 9 to 5 people, especially, or maybe even earlier than that, but not much later. And so I know I'm speaking for people who are in particular, like the nursing workforce, which is a huge workforce at the university. I personally, I can take the bus to work, but I can't get the bus home from work. So is there a discussion about expanding those times for people who work off shift, third shift, second shift, and as nurses do long shifts?
Sure. Yes, all of the scenarios do explicitly mention what we call the span or hours of operation. It's one of the fundamental things that we can do to make transit more attractive, is to frankly start it earlier in the morning and run it later at night. Larger cities will run 24/7. I don't know that we'll get there in 25 years, but certainly we have the potential to start earlier and run later. One of the things we want to hear from people is that as important or more important than, for example, more frequency during the day? That's the kind of trade-off that we will have to make in terms of how we spend limited resources. So that's absolutely a part of it. And if that's your preference, we'd love to hear that.
I can let you know that a second kind of follow-up is that are you working with the university? Because I know the traffic and the parking on the Hill doesn't just impede people who work there, it impedes the patient experience as well. So are you working with the university at all and talking about how they might work with you and help subsidize some of that cost in return for being able to provide more parking for their patients who are coming, especially with building a whole new tower?
Sure. We have enjoyed a long and constructive relationship with the university. Right now, you may not know it, every MRIDE card, whether from faculty, staff, or students, can be swiped on our fare boxes. And the rider doesn't pay anything, and we just bill the university on the back end. That's an example of a kind of collaboration we've been fortunate enough to enjoy for years. We are very aware of the university's parking challenges. It's one of the things that drives our ridership potential. We've not had specific conversations with them about the hospital in a little bit, but I do suspect this plan and some of the ideas in here will spur those conversations anew. We were looking at just that outer ring park and ride lot, for example, from further away. That combined with an increased number of local buses, we actually started to wonder, how many buses are we putting through the Hill on an hourly basis? If there's a bus every minute, does the road system have the capacity to handle that many vehicles? Would we need to build a terminal at the hospital just to handle the volume of people coming and going? So these are ambitious plans in some respects, but they do require thinking kind of at a different level of infrastructure. But I'm happy to report we do have the relationships with the university. We have a long, successful track record of working with them. And if those ideas spur those sorts of conversations, I know we could take the right person, get a coffee, and talk it out.
Well, I think that's great. And it's probably a great time to talk about it, just as the university is especially talking about expanding that bridge over by the university to try to ease some of the traffic. I'm thinking, I didn't love the idea of expanding the bridge, but expanding the bridge for dedicated bus lanes and getting more people busing up onto the Hill, that sounds like a great idea. So thanks very much. And I'll look forward to riding the bus more. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Scott. Commissioner Jefferson?
Thanks, Chair. Good evening, Matt. Good to see you again. I appreciate your presentation. If you could send that to us, that would be something that I would be grateful to see. Just wanted to know about the ride, the A ride and the flex ride, those type of things that are moving now. How will they be, implemented into your plans? I see what you have there is very ambitious. Those nights where people are working at night and those type of things, would those rides be available? Because I know you won't have bus routes for those late night shifts, but something like that. I don't know.
Sure. And it's good to see you again as well, Commissioner. We have a whole raft of services that we call demand response. And in a different time, you might have thought that that's maybe like a taxi in terms of you call it and it responds to your need. That's different from the scheduled bus service where you know when it's coming, then you just go out to meet it. You covered quite a few things there, so I'll break it down and sort of talk it one at a time. A-Ride is our paratransit service. That's the service that the Americans with Disabilities Act requires us to provide parallel and complementary to our fixed route service. It's specifically targeted and exclusively targeted to persons with disabilities that prohibit them from using the fixed route service. We will always provide that service, not just because it's federal law, but also because it's the right thing to do. As our fixed route network, if it physically expands its footprint, then we will, by law, have to expand A-Ride. If the services run, back to Commissioner Scott's question, later in the evening, then the paratransit will have to run later in the evening as well. They are joined together. So those services are addressed in the plan, and we really want to know, is that adequate or should we be doing more? One way of doing more is FlexRide, which is a service you also mentioned. This is a service we've had great success with in Ypsilanti Township, just south of the lake, north of the lake, getting over to Rawsonville Road. This is a demand response service that operates for the general public. You call, book a ride, the vehicle comes to your neighborhood, your subdivision, your doorstep to pick you up. In that particular case, we use that kind of in replacement for a taxi. We use that in low density situations where there aren't enough people, there isn't enough demand to make a fixed scheduled bus route economically viable. So we put in FlexRide in advance to begin to build the ridership, to make sure there is a safety net of service for people, even in those low density areas. As those areas develop and get bigger, perhaps they will be able to support the fixed route bus. We're finding FlexRide works the best on the periphery of our service area, mostly because those areas are lower density. We're also using the same service in Pittsfield Township, for example, and we may see it sort of emerge in other areas as well. So that's an option we also want people's feedback on. And then finally, you mentioned overnight. We do actually run overnight service, but not the fixed buses. Those shut down around midnight most of the time. Overnight, we run something called Night Ride, which in the past was actually contracted to a taxi company. So if particularly nurses on swing shift, hotel cleaning staff, for example, whomever needed a ride, there would still be something available. But it was probably less convenient and a bit more expensive than catching the bus would be. We will continue to provide that service as well under all these scenarios. But if we expand the fixed scheduled service later in the evening, that would probably supplant the Night Ride service, replace it, hour for hour. But these are all options, and we really would love to get feedback on them. If people think they're not good enough or just right, that's important for us to hear.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Look forward to looking ahead on what you're planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Commissioner Sanders.
Good evening, Mr. Carpenter. I just have a question about your partnerships for funding with other employers. So we know that you traditionally partner with the universities, but are there any other larger employers in Washtenaw County that assist or supplement the cost of ridership for their employees? I'm not expecting you to give me a long list. I'm just curious.
We have a number of arrangements with a number of different businesses for what we call the bulk sale of passes. And this is typically how employers find it easiest to help their employees get to work. they buy, 100 bus passes from us a week, rather than, come down to the transit center. We just mail it to them on sort of like a subscription recurring basis. In downtown Ann Arbor, we've had an arrangement like this with the DDA for some time that encompasses most of the employers in the downtown Ann Arbor area, many of whom are quite small. But we also have, I think, bulk fare sales with EMU and Washtenaw County Community College. There are probably some other ones that I'm forgetting at the moment, but these programs are open to anyone who'd like to engage us with a bulk fare purchase. We would love to talk to them.
And is there, so have tokens been eliminated?
Oh gosh, tokens. Yes, we still do make little metal discs with our logo stamped on them. You can buy them at our sales outlets at the headquarters and downtown. I will confess, they're probably working towards being phased out, but we still do get a lot of social service agencies wanting to buy them from us specifically. So when they're working with their clients, and this is everyone from CIL to Safe House to many of the other nonprofits throughout the communities that we serve. If they have clients who need, a week worth of bus pass or transportation for a month, they sometimes find it easier to deal with the little metal discs than they do with the paper monthly passes. The nice things about tokens is they never expire. So we will probably keep them, at least for that purpose, for the foreseeable future.
Thank you.
Okay, any other commissioners? Okay, seeing none. Thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate your time tonight. You had a lot of questions, a lot of interest. Your service obviously is very important to the community. And so thank you, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you all very much for your time. Please have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you. With that, I will turn it back to Commissioner Hodge to resume the Ways and Means meeting.
Thank you, Sheriff Shink. All right, back to me. So now I'm looking for someone to move the agenda. Commissioner Scott, quick on the draw.
Thank you. I would like to move the agenda for A1, the Sheriff's Office Support Services Reorganization. For B1, the Conviction, Integrity, and Expungement Unit Position Creation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, that was quick. Okay. Sorry, Commissioner LeBar. We're going to give it to Commissioner Shink this time. Okay. Short agenda. So let's move on with it to Sheriff. Sheriff is here. Do you want to say anything about it?
No, I think the resolution speaks for itself. We've grown significantly over the last few years, and some of the initiatives that we have started require some additional support. We appreciate the support that we get from county administration and central administration, but there are continually expanded needs, for example, around technology and other leadership positions that really warrant us forwarding this recommendation to create these positions. As you also see in the resolution, we worked with County Finance and Human Resource to make sure that there was a net neutral impact on County General Fund.
Thank you. Yeah, we appreciate that kind of financial impact. It's a good one. Commissioner Sanders, is that a question or is that an old hand?
It's an old hand.
Oh, okay. All right. Does anybody have questions for the sheriff? Nope. Okay. I think we all did our homework. So, Robert, I think we can call the roll on this one.
Commissioner Beeman?
Yes.
Commissioner Hodge?
Yes.
Commissioner Jefferson?
Yes.
Commissioner LeBar?
Yes.
Commissioner Maciejewski?
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan?
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders?
Yes.
Commissioner Scott?
Yes.
Commissioner Shink?
Yes.
Item passed.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for being here, Sheriff. I know you didn't give any public comment in favor of this, but I think it's a good proposal.
Thank you. And thank you, commissioners, for your support as always. I appreciate it. We appreciate it.
All right, next up, I think Prosecutor Sapp is going to want to say a few things. You're here, Prosecutor?
I am. So first of all, I really want to extend my thanks to all of you, the Board of Commissioners, for all your work and support in bringing the Conviction Integrity and Expungement Unit to this point, as well as the earlier support that allowed us to begin operating in a interim capacity. I also want to thank Administrator Dill for all his work on that. I know I've sent a lot of materials on this, and I promise I will stop bombarding your emails with memoranda on this unit. But it is really one of my top priorities as prosecutor, and I think that in public comment, hearing from the exonerees, I really can't say it better than those men who have lost years of their life due to a wrongful conviction. In my view, a wrongful conviction, sending somebody to prison for something that they did not do, is not just the worst mistake that a prosecutor can make, or a prosecutor's office can make. I really believe that it is the worst mistake that the government can make. It's the most awesome exercise of governmental power to deny somebody their freedom, their liberty, to take them away from their families, their communities. And though, of course, sometimes that's necessary for the government to do that, for us to do that when somebody is actually innocent of the crime for which they were convicted, it's a deep injustice. And a Conviction Integrity Unit allows us to remedy those mistakes, allows us to rectify those old injustices. I outlined this in the memo, and Commissioner Jefferson also referred to this in his comments. But the reason these units are so important and integral in prosecutors' offices is because we have access to the files, to the data, to things that outside counsel representing folks seeking to vindicate their innocence simply don't have access to. In addition, procedurally, it is very difficult to reopen a past conviction, even if there is overwhelming evidence of innocence, but the prosecutor can just go into court and do it. So it's a procedural shortcut too, and that's why it can take decades for innocence projects with fantastic lawyers to secure exonerations, but conviction integrity units can do this in a matter of months. So I'm really, again, grateful to the commission for bringing this forward, to all the work that has gone into this. And I cannot say it better than the voices of the powerful men from the National Organization of Exonerees who have shared their voice time and again. I just want to emphasize how remarkable those folks are. Nobody, I don't think, would blame them after serving decades in prison if they wanted to, just simply move back home and see their families and move on with the rest of their lives. And they're out here advocating, not just in this county, not just in Michigan, but they travel across the country to support justice and to support other folks that are wrongfully convicted. And, I just want to extend my personal thanks to them for continuing to show up. And I hope you all know that we'll always stand with you in your mission to ensure that wrongful convictions do not happen again and can be swiftly remedied. I do want to just briefly emphasize the other part of the Conviction Integrity and Expungement Unit's work, which is facilitating expungements for Washtenaw County residents. On April 11th of this year, a new law went into effect that dramatically expanded the availability of expungement to folks in Michigan who have old criminal convictions. We have operating in an interim capacity with our partners at Michigan Works, with our partners at Michigan Advocacy Program, Legal Services, U of M Law School, Treetown Law. That coalition has now helped upwards of 500 Washtenaw County residents get started on the process of clearing old criminal records. This stuff is powerful too. We had a expungement event at the Washtenaw Learning Resource Center last Saturday, and we had, I think, around 80 folks show up. But I just want to close by sharing the story of one person who showed up. He had already been working with our office, already been working with Francis Walters, who is the interim director of the Conviction, Integrity, and Expungement Unit, and who I intend to appoint if this position is approved. And he just came in and he said, I'm looking for Francine. And we said, who's Francine? And we figured out he meant Francis. This was a guy, he didn't need anything from the expungement fair, but he heard we were going to be there. He heard she was going to be there. And he showed up and he said, I just want to thank you for doing what I never thought was possible, which is giving me a second chance, which is allowing me to clear my old criminal record. And he brought along a little gift for one of her children. For many people, this opportunity to get a clean slate after having stayed out of trouble for years, the opportunity to clear convictions from their records that are decades in the past, to obtain jobs, to obtain housing, to open new doors, it really is life-changing. And I'm proud of the work that we have been doing. I'm looking forward to continuing to work with our partners if indeed this unit is fully and permanently funded. And again, I thank everybody here from administration and from the commission for all their work and support in getting us to this point.
All right, well, I open it up for questions and comments. I don't imagine there's many questions since we've been working on this for so long, but the opportunity is there. Okay, Commissioner LaBarre, I see you.
Thanks, Chair. Prosecutor Savitt, thanks for all your work on this. And thank you for some of the ways in which I think you've galvanized public comment about it. I thought tonight's was particularly effective. And regardless of the creation of the position here, which I'm glad we're doing, I think just highlighting this issue is exponentially helpful for those individuals it impacts. And I hope you'll lean on us for ways we can help in that in the future. Thanks, Chair.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Morgan.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. Just want to second Commissioner LaBarre's comments. I think this is phenomenal. I think it is just really great when we have the community engaged in something incredibly powerful, and we can move forward and support that request from the community and certainly the request from your office and from the work that you are doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Thank you, Chair. Again, Mr. Savitt, appreciate the opportunity to see this happen in Washtenaw County. It's been a long time coming. It's one of those things that I didn't know the things I knew about why it took so long to have those convictions turned around. But I thank your office for doing that. And then with the expungement, I mean, it's been helping so many people. And we've had so many expungement fairs from your office and from Robin McCoy and others over the years. It's amazing to hear that still 80 people came last Saturday. So continue the good work working with helping people that are being, given a second chance. I knew a guy who had graduated from Eastern Michigan, but he had a felony and he couldn't get a job. I mean, he had a master's degree, but those type of people have the opportunity now here in Washtenaw. I appreciate that. And I like the suit jacket. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Any other commissioners? Wow. Not seeing any. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Prosecutor Savitt, for your patience as we work through this, and thank you, Administrator Dill and your team for working so hard to make that happen. I know it's it's always a challenge to create positions, and this one took some time. And I'm grateful for all the public comment that we received this week and in previous weeks about this. It's clearly been of interest to the board to support this. It's just been a matter of figuring out how we could make it happen, and we are making it happen. I assume that that's the way the vote is going to go. But let's find out, Robert. Let's do it.
Commissioner Hodge?
Yes.
Commissioner Jefferson?
Yes.
Commissioner LaBarre?
Yes.
Commissioner Maciejewski?
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Schenk,
Yes.
Commissioner Beaman.
Yes.
Item passed.
All right, fantastic. Okay, well, we are going to move it along now to report of the county administrator.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. Just wanted to take a moment to first thank Matt Carpenter for the very comprehensive update this evening. I think there's more to come on this item. We'll make sure that our organizations stay connected. The second part of my update is just a short update on the work that we have engaged with the Safe House Center. That work is really in three broad categories. Joining me this evening is Jason Fee, the Director of Facilities Management. We're going to give you an update on services to survivors, an update on some direct support to Safe House programming, and some of the facility improvement and concerns that you've heard. So I just wanted to let you know that I've had a conversation with now every survivor that we have engaged with over the last 3 weeks. That number totals 7 at the current point. And I want you all to know, despite some of the rhetoric you hear in the community, that we have not said no to a single request from a survivor. Those requests include housing, medical services, food, crisis support, transportation, clothing, and security. So we have tried to step up in a meaningful way to provide those services in a manner that I believe can help to move them to a better situation. I do want to take this opportunity to thank CMH, specifically the crisis response team, who have stepped up and been a direct conduit to services. OCED for their work around some of the items related to food, transportation, and clothing. County administration, who has really stepped in and provided another conduit for survivors to get much needed services. And also the Sure Moms group that's operating out of the Community Engagement Office. They have stepped up and offered an opportunity for a roundtable discussion with those survivors. So as you can see, it's been all hands on deck over the last 3 weeks to provide direct support to survivors. And again, I want to underscore that we have not said no to this point to any of the requests. Certainly there have been some challenges in providing those services, but we are looking for ways to make sure that we meet survivors where they're at and that their needs are being met. Secondly, specific to Safe House, direct programming support is ongoing. I'm in regular discussions with the acting executive director. The board of Safe House, the Safe House Finance Committee met today. I'll be meeting with the executive team from Safe House on Monday morning at 8 o'clock. And our goals have been, there's a laundry list of things that we're working on, from staffing planning and resource planning, financial resource planning, program support, review of the current contract, the contract bylaws, an update on the investigation, public communications, and the current state of private donations. So all of those things are in the queue, and I expect to have a more detailed update both later this week and in the coming and during the coming Friday updates as we move through the next few weeks. So just in terms of making sure that our response is appropriate, we are doing all that we can to make sure that domestic violence services in our community and the needs of our survivors are being met in the highest possible way. Lastly, as you all know, there's been some concern levied related to the operation of the facility. There's some deferred maintenance items and safety and security items that we want to make sure that we step up and address. Again, I'm joined by Jason Fee, our Director of Facilities Management, who would like to provide you with just a quick update on where we stand with those improvements. Jason?
Thank you, Greg. Good evening, commissioners, and thank you for the opportunity to provide a brief update on some ongoing facilities work at Safe House. Going back the past 25 years, facilities has worked hand in hand with Safe House to prioritize replacement and maintenance on the major building systems of the facility. Also, over the past recent memory, worked hand in hand with partners with the Safe House to update and match smaller projects to support and support and continue the ongoing needs of their program and changing operations. My update tonight will touch on a combination of deferred maintenance items and a couple facilities enhancements pending. The three areas we're currently focused on at Safe House are room finishes, work around the kitchen, and security. Tonight I'll focus on security in the kitchen. Excuse me, as security with all county facilities, safety and security is of the utmost priority for us. We have done an extensive evaluation of the overall security of the facility and have a plan in place to enhance some of the existing systems and to increase security by adding additional layer of physical security to some of the existing components. And security enhancements include work from outside down to the residence room and everything in between. Some of the upgrades that we're looking at, adding cameras, looking at security fence, card access controls, and hardware upgrades. The kitchen, another top priority for facilities is making sure the space is designed, built, and outfitted for the intended use. We have a little bit of work to do in the kitchen area. The original design of the kitchen was more of a residential style kitchen with some commercial components to it. So our plan is to upgrade really the entire kitchen, starting with equipment, looking at the room finishes from flooring, walls, etc. And then overall just improving the functionality of the kitchen for both the residents and the staff over there. We will be re-outfitting the kitchen to fit the current needs and the use by converting the residential kitchen really to a full-scale commercial kitchen, again, to support their ongoing operations. Again, that will entail new flooring, room finishes, cabinets, new commercial equipment, and then also replacing walk-in freezers and coolers. Really, the other piece that we're working on is kind of just fit and finishes for some of the rooms, and again, catching up on a little bit of deferred maintenance, and again, matching up the finishes for the ongoing operations out there. So with that, happy to, that'll conclude, and I'll be happy to answer any questions specifically around facilities and ongoing work at Safe House.
So before we get to questions, I just want to add just two other closing points. One, my goal would be to harden the perimeter of the facility, but soften the interior. This is a space where we want survivors to feel valued and supported. So we'll work really hard to make sure that we try to accomplish those goals. And then lastly, I will look to Commissioner Schenk, Scott, Sanders, and Beeman to help guide outreach efforts. I think we are at the point now where outside of the work of the Safe House Board, county government needs to reach out and create outreach efforts for community groups. So I'll look to them to help frame that outreach and the message associated with that. So those things will happen in the coming weeks. And I just want to say really quickly, I want to thank the 9 commissioners for stepping up and providing support for not only the survivors, but ask the tough questions related to how we've been operating. I think some of you know we've been operating with this same Safe House model for well over 25 years. And obviously, some feel that it is broken. Others feel like it needs to be updated in some meaningful ways. And we're committed to doing that work. So with that, both of us are here. My team is here. We'll answer any questions that you all may have.
All right. Question time. Commissioner Jefferson, I assume that's a hold hand. Okay. My assumption is correct. We're going to move on to Commissioner Sanders.
I'm just interested in whether or not there's involvement with the health department regarding some of the upgrades at the facilities related to the fact that we are still playing around with the pandemic right now in terms of, health and wellness when we look to sort of make changes or sort of redesign that space.
So there hasn't been, to this point, there hasn't been any involvement with the with public health related to some of the design functions. At this point, there has been no plans made to restructure the current building configuration. Fit and finishes will be addressed. The security perimeter will be addressed. Security cameras, those kinds of things will be addressed. There's a huge deferred maintenance item related to, or a couple of them, but the one that is in most need of some attention is the kitchen area. So those kinds of things are currently being addressed. And certainly as we move forward, we'll look to all the resources at our disposal to help craft a path forward for Safe House. I think by and large at this point, I certainly don't speak for you all, but it is my desire to make sure that Safe House has everything that they need to function in a manner that's consistent with the framework that our county and the outcomes that our county would love to see. And in the event that can't happen, we're certainly prepared, poised to step in and make any changes that are necessary. But I will rely on the 9 of you to help guide those discussions, guide that interaction with the board. Over the next few weeks, we're waiting on the internal investigation to be completed. I believe that there are some opportunities for us to perhaps modify the contract relationship and look at the bylaws in a way to make sure that the governance structure is appropriate for this community moving forward. So all of those things are in the queue. And I know that's more than what you asked, Commissioner Sanders, but those are all areas where I think we can have a huge impact on domestic violence services in Washtenaw County.
Other questions, comments, commissioners? Commissioner Schenk.
Thank you, Chair Hodge. I want to give an especially strong thank you to Administrator Dill and to the staff working with Administrator Dill, because taking on the work of supporting survivors as quickly as our administration team has done has been no easy task. And I know that they have all worked very, very hard to meet the needs of the survivors. And so I want to thank you and recognize publicly all the hard work that I know that you've been doing and will continue to do so long as Safe House is not able or willing to take all the survivors in our community who need shelter. And so there's that. And then I also want to say, because I think when we hear our administrator talk and our facilities director talk about all the work they're doing at Safe House, people might wonder, well, why weren't they doing that before? And I want to make it very clear that the contract between the county and Safe House is very clear that Safe House is responsible for the maintenance and care of the building. And so I know that there has been a longstanding tradition of the county doing that work. It has been a gift from the county. And I think that it's important to recognize that this work that's been done is work that the county is doing in goodwill and good faith, but it's something, and I guess I want to be careful about how I say it, but I also want it to be really clear that the contract very clearly states that work was meant to be the responsibility of Safe House. And so I hope everybody appreciates that. So I think maybe I'll leave it at that. And thank you again.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Commissioners, I apologize to Commissioners Jefferson and Hodge. They both reached out to me on a number of occasions over the last couple of weeks, just to pledge their support and really inquire about the work that's happening at Safe House and our response. So I just want to say thank you to you all. It was really helpful to hear your thoughts around this item.
Hey, no apologies necessary. We're all just trying to do the work. Okay, any other thoughts, questions? If not, okay, we're going to move it on.
That will conclude my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on now to a report of the chair of the board.
No report, thank you.
Okay, moving on to report of the chair of Ways and Means, which is me. Since we're still kind of in the safe house realm here talking about it, I do want to emphasize the incredible work that Administrator Dill and his team and Chair Shink have been putting into it. I've had some conversations about it being in board leadership, but the amount of time that the two of them specifically, and then Administrator Dill and his team have been putting into it has been astronomical. It's a lot of time that goes into it, and it's not something that we talk about a ton at meetings like this, but I know that they are spending a lot of time and a lot of support is needed to support the survivors that the county is working and have pledged our support for. And I know a lot of that work has been coming from the two of them and Administrator Dill's team. So I just wanted to say a special thank you because, I mean, they're not going to say that they're doing that, but I know how much time they put into it. So I want to make sure that everyone else is aware as well. And with that, I will move on to items for current and future discussion. Anybody got any? Commissioner Beeman, I see you.
Thank you. I just have a quick piece that I'd just like to get out there, as not all of my residents are aware, but the Village of Manchester lead levels in water have tested above the state recommendation of 15 parts per billion. So residents within the village are encouraged to contact the Village of Manchester. There are some filters available for families with children under the age of 18 and pregnant women to help them during this time. Testing is also available. So I would recommend connecting with the village, or the health department here can also be a great help. The number is 734-222-3800. So please just be aware that the lead levels have increased, unfortunately, within the Village of Manchester and our older homes. Thanks.
And thank you for elevating that issue. What's we got? Anybody got other items for current and future discussion? I want to miss anybody. I'm looking around. Not seeing any. Okay, we are going to move along to pending items. Pending item, we have the 2022-2025 budget reaffirmation. Do you have any comments? So for our viewers at home, this is an item that will remain on our agenda for quite some time as we go through the budget reaffirmation process. You'll see it here now, and you'll see it in probably the next meeting. And then maybe after that, it'll move off of it. We'll just see where things go. But this is an opportunity for commissioners to have any questions, comments about the budget. I'm not seeing any. Okay, not seeing any. That's all right. So we're going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Support.
So, okay, we got a second. Okay, how about a 6-minute break? Come back at 9:30, everybody. All right, we'll be back at 9:30.
I need a few minutes because my cat, when the meetings go late, comes in and starts to eat my cords. So I'm going to go lock her away.
Okay.
See you soon.
See you soon. See you in 6 minutes.
Looks like we're going to have a pretty busy day tomorrow.
Yes. Yes, we are.
Greg, is that in reference to working session or something else?
It's a reference to the entirety of the day tomorrow. We have a series of meetings tomorrow that begin in the morning. So.
Ooh, we got a space plan tomorrow.
Excited.
Try to move quickly through this agenda so that you can get a good night's rest before tomorrow's meetings.
Thanks.
I'm just going to give the commissioners who aren't back quite yet another minute or so. Sometimes it's hard to make those 5 minutes do everything that they need to do.
Salad. So
You got what today?
Okay.
What's for dinner?
Oh, okay. Today is some leftover spinach lasagna, which is delicious, and then a massaged kale salad that I'm gonna put a little lemon on, and I think maybe some pear and goat cheese.
Wow. Okay. What makes the kale massaged?
You actually massage it with olive oil. It sort of like breaks it down like a little bit before you eat it, because sometimes kale, if you don't do that, can be a little bit like, I don't know, you're chewing straw. I really like kale, but it really does help to massage it ahead of time.
All right. It's culinary tips with Katie.
I am the cooking commissioner.
The cooking, yeah.
Right. I just stir my kale. All right. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Mr. Mulcahy, can you please call the roll?
Commissioner Beaman,
Present, attending remotely from the Village of Manchester, Washtenaw County, Michigan.
Commissioner Hodge,
Present, attending remotely from Ypsilanti Township, Washtenaw County, Michigan.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Present, attending remotely from the Township of Ypsilanti, Washtenaw County, Michigan.
Commissioner Labar,
Present, attending remotely from the city of Ann Arbor, Washtenaw County, Michigan.
Commissioner Maciejewski,
Present, attending remotely from Dexter Township, Washtenaw County, Michigan.
Commissioner Morgan,
Present, attending remotely from the city of Ann Arbor, Washtenaw County, Michigan.
Commissioner Sanders,
Present, attending remotely from Pittsfield Township, Washtenaw County, Michigan.
Commissioner Scott,
Present, attending remotely from the city of Ann Arbor, Washtenaw County, in the great state of Michigan.
Commissioner Schenk.
Present, attending remotely from Northfield Township, Michigan.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we have citizen participation. If anyone wishes to speak, you have 3 minutes. Please identify your name and where you live. Mr. Lindeman, are there any members of the public wishing to speak?
No hands have been raised yet.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then we will move on and also dispense with commissioner follow-up to citizen participation. Are there any liaison reports tonight? Okay, see Commissioner Hodge.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things for the board to be aware of. Both the Community Action Board and the Board of Health have been talking about doing an amendment to their bylaws for a little while now. So I would expect that, I think given the timeline that they've been moving at, that might happen by the end of the year. So if that happens, then, it'll come to us for approval. So just want people to be aware of that. Just want people to be aware of that.
Thank you. Tonight we have a special order of business. Would somebody please move the resolution setting a public hearing for the amended 2022-24 budgets and the recommended 2025 budget for Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021 at 6:45 p.m. via Zoom?
So moved.
Any support?
Or
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Oh,
Aye.
wait, we don't do it that way. I'm sorry. Mr. Mulcahy, can you please call the roll?
Commissioner Beaman,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodge,
yes.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Yes.
Commissioner Labar,
Yes.
Commissioner Machieski,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Schenk.
Yes.
Item passed.
Thank you. We have no appointments. I'm looking for someone to move the consent agenda, please.
So moved.
So moved. Support.
Does anybody wish to pull anything from the, no, we don't do that with consent agenda. I'm sorry. By the time we get to this, I am so tired. It's hard for me to think straight. So, any discussion? Okay, Mr. Mulcahy, will you please call the roll on approval of the consent agenda?
Commissioner Hodge,
Yes.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Yes.
Commissioner Labar,
Yes.
Commissioner Machieski,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Schenk,
Yes.
Commissioner Beaman.
Yes.
Agenda passed.
Thank you. We're at item 10, resolutions. Would somebody please move the resolutions? Commissioner Labar?
Chair, start with item 1 on Ways and Means, the 21-22 Secondary Road Patrol Program. Sorry, that's 1A. 1B is the 21-22 Strategic Traffic Enforcement Program. 1C is the resolution ratifying submission on the 21-22 Pedestrian and Bicycle Strategic Enforcement Program. D, the ratification of approval and accepting the Emergency Housing Voucher Grant Program for MISTA. E is the resolution ratifying the submission of the Title IV Child and Parent Guardian Legal Representation Program from NBHHS. F is approval of 2022 budget for the CBB. Under 2, Board of Commissioners A, 1 is the resolution authorizing the appointment of the Historic District Study Committee for the Wild Fray Farm for Historic District designation. B is a resolution approving the bylaws of County Commission on Aging. And then C, we've handled at the Ways and Means meeting, which is the co-op resolution. And then 3 is approval of claims.
Support.
Does anybody wish to pull any of the resolutions for separate consideration? Any discussion? Okay, Mr. Mulcahy, will you please call the roll regarding the resolutions?
Commissioner Jefferson,
Yes.
Commissioner Labar,
Yes.
Commissioner Machieski,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Schenk,
Yes.
Commissioner Beaman,
Yes.
Commissioner Hodge.
Yes.
Resolutions passed.
Thank you. Item 10, report from the county administrator.
No additional report.
Thank you. I have no additional report. Item 12, items for current or future discussion. Does anybody have anything they'd wish to discuss? Okay, thank you. Next, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn to our next session.
So moved.
Support.
Jason, you're making me hungry.
I usually try and wait till after the meeting, but I couldn't wait. I was too hungry.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Chair.
Stay
Have a
safe.
good evening.
Good night.
Good
See you
night.
tomorrow.
Okay.